You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up the better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 19th part of What If Deku and Hero Academia Joins Power Rangers. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Flood Zone Afternoon. Meanwhile at the same time, somewhere in the USJ, Midoriya came out of the warp villain's black portal and began to fall towards a large lake in the flood zone while screaming in a panic as he did so. Midoriya hit the surface with a big splash, then sank a fair distance before looking around his surroundings. Water? Which means I'm still in the USJ. Midoriya thought while holding his breath underwater and noticed the likelihood that Mist Villain transported him to the flood zone. With a serious look on the green-haired boy's face, he begins swimming upward to the surface while thinking about the situation he and his classmates are in. If I'm still here, then that warp villain must have sent the others to different locations throughout the USJ to split us all up and pick us off one by one, while also preventing us from leaving to get help. So many questions and no answers. But then he begins to have thoughts about hearing Shigaraki and the United Alliance of Evil on a mission to kill both All Might and his team. Those guys from the League of Villains said they came here to kill All Might, while the United Alliance of Evil want to kill us Rangers. But where is All Might? We could really use his help right now, especially with the past enemies of the Power Rangers showing up now. I need to regroup with my team and the others in class, so we can come up with a plan to fight back. Midoriya thought in determination while swimming before he suddenly felt a hand grabbing his left leg. The boy looks down and to his shock sees it is one of his girlfriends Kinoko, holding her hand to her mouth while holding onto his leg for dear life as the mushroom girl has a terrified expression on her face. Kinoko? She must have been here too by that warp villain. Midoriya thought as he could see that she was running out of air. This is bad. She needs air and fast. He used his right hand to grab Kinoko's left one before pulling her up closer to wrap his right arm around her waist, and then the two started swimming to the surface quickly. As they were swimming, Midoriya and Kinoko noticed something moving fast in the water and saw it was a shark-like villain heading towards them, as seeing this made Kinoko freak out even more and Midoriya glared angrily at the villain. First catches of the day, the shark-like villain while swimming at the two students. Nothing personal, kids. But you both gotta die. The villain opened his shark-like mouth wide, full of sharp teeth. As the villain was about to reach them, Kinoko closed his eyes and prepared for the worst, while Midoriya was going to plan a counterattack on the villain with him clenching his left fist as Black Whip whirred to life. Then suddenly out of nowhere, a green and black blur jumped out of nowhere, smashing into the side of the shark man's head hard, revealing it to be Tsuyu, who had dived kicking the shark villain in the head while carrying Minetta under one of her arms. This surprised both Midoriya and Kinoko, as they did expect to be saved by their frog girlfriend of all people, with Tsuyu looking up at them before speaking. Hey Midoriya and Kinoko. Tsuyu called out through the water. Bleh. She then ejected her long tongue and wrapped it around the two. With the two of them wrapped around her tongue, Tsuyu jumped off the shark-like villain with a mighty leap that took her and her classmates she was carrying while swimming at a fast pace to the surface. See ya, Tsuyu repeated back, while the villain screamed in agony and sent him deeper underwater. Once they rose to the surface of the water, Tsuyu with Minetta in her right arm looked up at a single ship floating in the pool water, where Shiozaki was on board waiting for them to resurface as she used her vines to get on the ship when they were teleported to the flood zone. Thank goodness that you are all right. Shiozaki stated in a tone of relief to see her classmates unharmed. Hang on, use my vines to get you on the ship," she stated while sending some of her vines down into the water. "Thanks for the help, Ribbit," Tsuyu replied back while using her long to lift Midoriya and Kanoko out of the water and toward the ship. Then Tsuyu placed them down as gently as she possibly could onto the ship's deck with Midoriya and Kanoko grunting slightly in each other's arms. "Kanoko, you good?" Midoriya asked her with the two of them sitting up. Why yeah, I think so," Kanoko said while regaining her breath. "Thanks for the save, Midoriya." "No problem," Midoriya said with a smile. "For a frog, you've got some pretty big bub, Tsu," Minetta mumbled all tired to Tsuyu's side, while Tsuyu retracted her tongue back into her mouth. "Perfect floaties," he said before brushing his head against one of the bub in her jumpsuit. Tsuyu clenched her teeth at his actions while being both embarrassed and angry, before constricting her tongue around Minetta's body and tossing the little perv onto the boat to slam him on there as retaliation to the pervert's actions, making Minetta yelp in pain unlike how she laid down Midoriya and Kanoko gently. Tsuyu climbed on the boat thanks to the help of Shiozaki's vines pulling her on board, as they were all self for the moment. "Thanks for that, Shiozaki," Tsuyu said to the religious girl. "No thanks is needed," Shiozaki said back with a smile. "You would have done the same for me, Tsuyu." She then turned to the man that she loved and one of the women she was sharing him with. "And I'm glad that you both are unharmed as well." "Yeah, the same to you too," Midoriya said before looking at Tsuyu. "And thank you too, Tsuyu. You saved our lives back there. I'm grateful for your help too." Kanoko thanked the frog girl as well. "You seem to have had things under control," Tsuyu said as she was confident that Midoriya could have beaten that villain without her help. "But this is turning out to be a terrible day of class," she stated to her friends. "Terrible isn't the word I would use in this situation," Shiozaki said with a frown. "Yeah, and it doesn't help that our enemies are here helping those villains too." Midoriya agreed with them about how bad things were for them. Those two villains. Did they really say that they came here to kill All Might and you Power Rangers? Kanoko asked in a frightened tone at remembering the two villains' words. "Unfortunately, I don't think they were lying to us," Midoriya stated back to the girl's question with serious reason. "It's like we discussed a few minutes ago before that warp villain spread us from the others. They planned this right from the start and knew our whole schedule and who'd be here. Then they split us up and separated us from the teachers and us rangers, so it would be easier to get rid of us. They were waiting for an opportunity and now everything is going exactly as they planned it." He told them as he assessed their current predicament and had to admit that it was a pretty clever plan. "I'm still curious how they are going kill All Might and you Rangers." Ribbit. Tsuyu said in wonder and curiosity, also got kinda scared of those things, but like always, she seemed calm. "I already figured out how the Alliance is planning on killing us Rangers. But for All Might, I noticed a dark-skinned muscular beast, complete with a beak standing next to the villain leading the attack. I think it's their weapon to kill All Might," Midoriya said as that Nomu was likely their ace in the hole to killing All Might. "But those guys from the League of Villains aren't the real ones I'm most concerned about at the moment," he exclaimed with narrow eyes while looking down at the deck. "Are you referring to those monsters helping the villains?" Shiozaki asked as she could tell what was worrying him. "Yeah," Midoriya said with a nod before looking back up at his friends. "Those are the same type of monsters that the other past Ranger teams had faced before. But something that doesn't make sense to me is why those Ranger enemies would team up with those villains, since they hate humans," he said thinking out loud. "Hey, hold on a second," Minetta protested getting their attention. "It's not like these guys can really kill All Might. Also we have you Power Rangers here to protect us from monsters. And let's not forget that Kuroka is already warning the school about the villains attacking," he said confident that everything will be alright. "Once All Might and the teachers shows up, you Rangers can team up with them to PND these villains and monsters until there's nothing left." He added with a determined frown while shadow boxing into the air. I don't think it'll be that simple, Minetta. Shiozaki said, disagreeing with what he just stated. Minetta looked at her confused. Shiozaki right, ribbit. Tsuyu said, grabbing the other's attention. Remember what Ren and others said back at the entrance. The villains spent so much time planning this attack, then they probably figured out a way to kill him. And while Midoriya and the others rangers might be very strong to take care of those monsters, there are only 8 of them against a large number of those creatures, so they won't be able to protect us from those monsters forever. She explained to him with honest bluntness and an expressionless face. And didn't you hear what that smoke guy in Thrax said? Maybe we should worry about not getting tortured to death. Otherwise, we might not survive long enough to see All Might or the other teachers again. And even if Kuroka does show up with help from the school, who knows if any of them will make it out in one piece. She stated, being realistic even if she sounded a little grim and pessimistic, while making Minetta sweating more and more from the truth behind her words. She's right, Shiozaki said, nodding her head as she crossed her arms. These villains are the kind of sinners that will do anything to win. She said, making Kinoko shaking like a leaf as she latched onto Midoriya's arm in fear. They threaten to kill us just to see if All Might will be angry, so now it's a matter if we can hold off until help arrives. She added with her own serious tone. With every sentence coming from both Tsuyu and Shiozaki, Minetta slowly devolved into panicky terror. And no, the pros are gonna save us, right? Minetta stuttered while asking Midoriya and waving his finger toward Tsuyu and Shiozaki. Midoriya, tell your big bub girlfriends to shut up. Midoriya immediately turned his head towards Minetta and shot cold look at him at his comment about his girlfriends, which made the smaller boy flinched back in fear and shut his mouth from speaking farther. I agree with them both. The monsters that we Power Rangers face are something you don't see every day. Midoriya said with seriousness to get his point across. They are strong, durable, unpredictable, and more dangerous than any of the villains that the pro heroes face. Even if All Might and the pros were to show up, they would still have a hard time fighting an army of monsters. If he was fighting against ordinary villains, then the boy knew All Might would win without a doubt. But Rangers' villains and monsters were nothing like the villains in their world. In any case, we better keep a close eye on ourselves. Remember what Thrax and that villain with the warp quirk just said. We have to be careful on our surroundings. Ranger enemies and villains all around ready to attack us. Plus, that mist guy also teleported our classmates all around this building. My guess they have them in the zones that 13 mentioned earlier. Midoriya reminded to his classmates. Why, you're right. I hope they're doing okay. Kinoko said, looking around at the other zones in the building. If any of the other rangers ended up getting sent to each one of the other zones, then the others should be fine with them around. Midoriya said as he was confident that his teammates would keep everyone safe. But we can't stay here longer. We gotta do something to rescue them. Ribbit. Tsuyu said as she wanted to help her friends. I couldn't agree more. We have to rescue our friends from the zones and get out of here as quickly as possible. Shiozaki said with a nod. As the UA students came to agreement on what they needed to do, something in the water caught the attention of Midoriya as he turned his head to see what it is. Ribbit. Tsuyu said while turning her head around in the same direction as her boyfriend, and noticed something coming to them from the water at high speeds. All 5 students then saw a dozen water-based villains arise from the water and coming to them, as they begin to surround the boat. UBSTRDS-NB. The shark villain from earlier shouted in anger, and this time he brought a couple of his friends along with him. I'll enjoy eating you. Ha! Bad guys. Minetta screamed really loud in terror. This isn't good. They're surrounding us from all sides. Shiozaki said in worry to their predicament. Kinoko frightful clenched onto Midoriya's arm in fear and worry of the approaching villains heading towards them. Midoriya looks on seeing the villains swimming towards the boat. The others were getting nervous and scared. They don't know what to do. They're on a boat in open water with no hope of getting to land. If they're really here for All Might, they may have a way to defeat him. They would have planned this attack if they didn't. Midoriya thought, ignoring the villains for the moment, and tried to think of their situation. If I were a betting man, then I bet that the key to defeating All Might has something to do with that huge bird brain. It looked like something that we Power Rangers would face. He thought with a finger under his chin. But why him out of all the other heroes? Because his very existence discriminates villains and evil? Because he's the one and only symbol of peace and justice? Then there's the past enemies that the Power Rangers has destroyed. I get why they wanted to kill us since we're Power Rangers, and they see us as a threat to their plans. But what are they doing in our world, and how long have they been here? Why are they working with the villains in our world? Just how many of them have been revived, and what are they planning? The boy thought nervously while covering his mouth with his hand. All these questions left the ranger nearly stumped. But as Midoriya started to think about why, he started to think about All Might, not as a hero, but as a person. The man was not perfect, he knew that, and Midoriya knew that, yet despite everything, All Might was a good person, someone Midoriya could call a close friend. Then his thoughts went to the ranger villains and how they operated. They don't care about things like borders or beliefs, they don't care about who is allied with who. All that matters to them is the conquest and destruction, the strong dominating the weak, survival of the fittest, and their common hatred for the Rangers. That's when the green-haired team came to a realization, after a brief analysis, their situation. Actually, it doesn't matter. Midoriya thought as his eyes had turned steady in a split second. I don't care what their reasons are. The inheritor of One for All thought, remembering All Might and Holotommy words of encouragement before holding out his right hand. I have to focus. His hands slowly clench into a fist while mentally steeling himself for the fight ahead of him. I'm a Power Ranger. So I have to face this evil. Head on. He demeanor changed from nervous to determination by tightening both his fist and teeth, as his eyes were covered by the shadows of his hair. Meanwhile, Tsuyu, Minetta, and Shiozaki were looking at the villains below the water while Kanoko was still holding onto her boyfriend's arm, as they felt fear creeping up in them. So what are we going to do? We're outnumbered here. Minetta screamed in a full-on panic mode. There's gonna be a plan, we can beat these villains. Shiozaki said, unable to think of a way out of this situation. I don't give a damn why they're here or who they're planning to kill. A voice of anger made everyone there on the boat all turning their heads back to Midoriya and saw his hair was shadowing his eyes. They decided to attack our class just to get to All Might and us Rangers. And I can't help but to be pss off by that fact. He stated while gritted his teeth and shaking his right fist in rage. Midoriya. Kanoko said in shock to see her boyfriend this angry. If they are here targeting us Power Rangers and having a way of beating All Might, then we have to stop whatever it is these bad guys are planning. Midoriya said with a serious voice. We have to work together and keep everyone safe. Kuroka should be back any minute now with the other teacher at UA, so we need to hold out long enough until they arrive. He then looked up at his fellow heroes in training with an angrily expression and an burning resolve of passion in his emerald green eyes. This is up to us. We have to beat these villains and rescue other friends. Let's be real heroes. By fighting and winning. The ranger stated with such courage and determination, as his words and resolve managed to encourage the others there with him. I agree. Let's do it. Shiozaki said with smile. I feel the same way, Ribbit. Tsuyu said, nodding with a small smile on her face. I'll help out in any way I see can too. Kanoko said nervously as she was trying to act brave. However, the only one there who wasn't reacting differently was Minetta, who looked at his classmates like they were crazy. Have you all lost your minds? Minoru shouted at them with tears streaming down his face. You're going to get us all killed. Ruins Zone, afternoon. In another different site, which was called the Ruins Zone, located in the northeast of the building, contains a simulated destroyed urban environment, with buildings found in precarious conditions. In one of the buildings, explosions were occurring on the top floor, as Bakugou screamed out a battle cry while blowing back a villain with an explosion. The explosive teen wasn't fighting alone with Kirishima, Kamakiri, Tetsu, and Yui there, standing back to each other while surrounded by villains as well. Yui kept her usual calm expression while taking a fighting stance, as her mind and body was ready to take on his dangerous threat. Mountain Zone, afternoon. Located to the south of the building, the Mountain Zone simulates a rocky, mountainous area, filled with cliffs. At the zone, Momo, Jairu, Pony, Reiko, and Kaminari were formed surrounded by a bunch of baddies armed enemies. Despite being outnumbered, Momo and Jairu glared at the villains without fear, as the two girls brought out their swords and were ready to fight to take on the enemy along with other 3 students there. Conflagration Zone, afternoon. Located in the southwest of the building, the zone simulates an urban environment that is constantly on fire, that was called the Conflagration Zone. Inside the dome, throughout flaming city streets, Kendo, Ojiro, Shishida, Manga, Shota, Monoma, and Aoyama stand face to face against an army of villains armed with weapons. Kendo, Ojiro, Shishida, and Shota stood in front of their classmates and each of them took their own combat stances ready against villains, while Manga, Monoma, and Aoyama stood back looking nervous but were still going to fight with their classmates. Downpour Zone, afternoon. Located in the northwest of the building, Zone simulates an urban environment that is constantly hit by heavy rainfall and strong winds, that was called the Downpour Zone. Inside the dome, in the middle of a crossway street, Tokoyami, Kurwaro, Kota, Setsuna, and Sen stand surrounded by a dozen villains ready to attack them. Tokoyami and Kurwaro had neutral expressions on their faces, with Setsuna and Sen gritting their teeth in worry, and Kota had a freaked-out look on his face. Central Plaza, afternoon. Meanwhile, at the same time with the UA students fighting to stay alive, Aizawa, Vlad King, and Sila were just finishing up the last of the villains in the Central Plaza. Eraserhead gave a roundhouse kick to one last villain that knocked them out of commission, before stopping his quirk with his hair falling down. He then glances over at the Demoness who is surrounded by a ton of unconscious villains and gives her a look of wonder. Aizawa didn't want to admit it, but having Sila there with them made fighting these villains a bit easier. Had it been only him and Vlad, then things wouldn't have looked good for them, especially since he didn't overuse his quirk this time. Take this. Vlad King shouted while using 2 large war hammers formed from his BLD and batted several villains away as they fell silent. And that's the last of them. He confirmed with him returning the BLD back to his body. Yeah, looks like it, Aizawa said, moving her to the BLD hero. I can't believe I'm saying this, but thanks Sila, he said, giving his gratitude to the demon. Having you here really made a huge difference. Agreed, that power you made beating these villains go much more quickly than either one of them alone. Vlad King said, also giving his own thanks to her. I was only doing what my MSTR instructed me to do, Sila said with a stoic tone, as she didn't care for the 2 heroes' compliments. But more importantly, there's still 2 more insects for us to beat before this is all over and done with. She pointed out, making the 2 teachers turn there at Turma and Nomu, who were standing there the whole time watching from the distance, as they were the only 2 villains left conscious to take care of. As the 2 heroes and demon were taking care of his party members, Tamura was observing the whole battle from the sidelines to learn about how his enemy's abilities worked. Useless, all of them, the decay villain said in disappointment, while kicking one of the fallen thugs that they took with them. If only those Alliance BSTRDS had been here sooner like they were supposed to be with their monsters, then we could have dealt with these heroes easily. Just 2 left, Vlad King muttered at the remaining villains. I'll take the big one. Then leave the other final boss to be me, Aizawa said out loud with narrow eyes, as he rushed at the decay villain while activating his quirk to shut down Turma's quirk and threw his capture cloth at the villain for the first move. Tamura charged towards Aizawa in response and grasped the capture scarf as he continued his rush forward. Aizawa then grabbed a part of his capture scarf, before moving forward, and elbowed Tamura in the stomach. But Tamura quickly blocked the elbow strike to his abdomen with his left palm. At the same time, Vlad King also charged forward at the villains, but his target was Nomu with the BLD hero using his quirk to gush out tons of BLD from his body as the man crossed his arms and hardened his BLD to form a battering ram on his forearms. The humanoid monster jumped into action by crossing its arms together to block the BLD hero assault and tanking the attack without much problem. Sila decided to stay back to observe the situation first before jumping in to help the humans, as she had a strange feeling while staring at that black muscular creature and knew there was something not right about it. "It was hard to see when you were jumping around," Tamura said wheezily while leading in closer to the hero. "But I found your tail, it's your hair." What he said made Aizawa's slightly bloodshot eyes widen under the goggles in shock, as the decay villain figured out how his quirk worked. "When it drops, it means you've stopped using your quirk. You're having to blink more often. There's Vlad King, whose quirk lets him control his BLD however he wants. But using up that much of his BLD must be taking a toll on him by now. You two shouldn't push yourselves too hard now. You might fall apart now. Wouldn't that be a shame?" He continued talking as if to wait for the right moment for Aizawa to stop using his power. But while Tamura was busy talking, Sila was watching and listening to their conversation and wondering what that human was doing drawing something like this out in the middle of a battle. He clearly did his research on his enemies before this attack, Sila observed from the distance. And it's possible that his tactical and battle analyzing skills are even better than what I anticipated. But yet, why is he wasting so much time talking to his opponent instead of fighting? She thought in wonder as to what the hands human was getting at. Then the Aetherius's eyes slightly widened in realization before clicking her tough in annoyance. So that's his plan. Sila thought as she finally realized what Turma was doing. Before Aizawa could blank, Sila used her macro curse to forcefully separate both him and Tamura, as the two men repelled backward from one another with Aizawa landing on one knee right next to the demon woman and Turma unable to move a muscle due to Sila's macro curse influence. "Sila. What was that all about?" Aizawa demanded the demon for an answer from the Aetherius. That human with the hands attached to his body was the one responsible for destroying the front gate to the school, Sila explained to the teacher in a calm manner, as Aizawa's eyes widened in shock. "If I didn't use my curse to remove you from him, then that human would have used his power on you the moment you'd blanked. That's why he was drawing out your conversation." Hearing this made Aizawa remembered the state of the front gate and how rotten it was before feeling a little relieved if not thankful for the Aetherius's help again, as he stood back up. "He would have destroyed my elbow, if it wasn't for Sila separating us." Aizawa thought in apprehension as he looked at Aetherius for a brief moment. "That DMN woman!" Tamura shouted in rage. "If she hadn't interfered, I could have used my quirk on Eraser Head. And if that wasn't bad enough, she used her quirk on me too. So now I can't move." He complained as his body was frozen in place. "Struggle all you want human but it's pointless," Sila said forcing the decay villain onto the floor. "You can't escape my macro curse," she stated coldly while flicking her hair. "Are you sure you're a hero? Because you don't sound like one right now." Tamura asked in a mocking tone, with Sila narrowing her eyes at the man. "Shut it," Aizawa said while moving towards the down villain and grabbing his hair to pull him up to his eye level. "You and everyone else involved in this attack are going to riot in a prison cell at Tartarus." He threatened the villain. "Those annoying quirks of yours isn't suited for drawn-out fights against big groups, is it?" Tamura commented to them while continuing to struggle to move. "But it seems that this horn woman making up for the both of you being out of your element here, huh, Eraser Head. The villain said, looking up with a mad grin on his face. You're much better at working stealthily. You're known for surprise attacks, not fighting head-to-head. While Vlad King, he works better in short fights since he'll lose more BLD and get weaker as a fight goes longer. But despite knowing all that, you two still didn't hesitate to jump into the middle of this fight. To put your students at ease. Plus that horn woman over there joined in on the battle really messed up our plan to overpower you two with our superior numbers. He continues rambling to them without a care in the world. Arg. Sila and Aizawa turned their heads when they heard the sound of Vlad King crying out a scream of pain. The BLD King was sent crashing to the floor after receiving a massive punch in the stomach from the monster Nomu, as Vlad King held his stomach while coughing out megatons of BLD from his mouth, feeling the effects of the beast for the first time. Vlad! Aizawa shouted out to his hurt colleague before turning his angry glare to Tamura's way. What the hell is that thing? Aizawa told the villain. What do you both think of him? Tamura said with a twisted laugh. He's the bioengineered, anti-symbol of peace. But you can call him, Nomu. He stated proudly to them, as this made their eyes wide from the name alone. Anti-symbol of peace? Sila thought as she eyed the humanoid beast to search for any weaknesses to exploit. So this thing is their secret weapon for killing All Might? Aizawa thought as he saw that Nomu was not done yet with Vlad King. I won't let you. He declared with a heated voice while using his quirk to erase that monster's powers. Vlad King raises his arms up to create BLD to protect himself from another one of Nomu's attacks, but the beast delivers another hard punch on Vlad King that breaks his defenses in an instant and slams him to the ground with his BLD flying everywhere. What? I know I erased his quirk. Aizawa thought in concern while watching his friend get hurt. Poor Vlad King. Next time don't interfere in my business. But don't worry, Nomu will have fun with you a bit later. Tamura said, taunting while enjoying watching Nomu taking care of that hero. In the meantime, Nomu, attack that woman next. He ordered the monster to go after his next victim. Nomu wasted no time in following the order, as the creature moved flash from there to appear behind Sila at high speed, making the Aetherius quickly turning her head around with wide eyes at the speed Nomu moved at. Nomu sent a punch at Sila, who didn't have any time to do anything except evade the blow by jumping high into the air. But Nomu quickly leaped after her and got above the Aetherius, making her gasp in surprise before holding her arms over her head to block another punch from Nomu as Sila fell HRD on the floor and created a sizable crack in the ground. Sila let out a scream of pain from the heavy blow she received with her losing control of the curse she put on Tamura, as the decay villain felt the unknown force preventing him from moving, his body being lifted, and noticed that Aizawa's attention was focused on something else. Taking advantage of this chance, Tamura kicks Eraserhead in his stomach to push him away from him, as he is now free from both him and Sila, with Nomu returning back to his side. Eraserhead lands on his feet, as he is at a good distance while glaring angrily at the villain and monster. SHT, I let my guard down, Aizawa said in frustration as his mind was on the fight more than that villain in his hands. But that's not the big issue at the moment. That black thing next to him could move pretty fast despite its large size and was able to both hurt Sila and Vlad with a single punch. I'm positive I erased his quirk. That means he's super strong, even without powers. I think he's as strong as All Might. He thought while thinking about that black humanoid beast in alarm. Sila lifted herself up from the floor and glared instantly at human villain and his pet of a monster, as it's been a long time since anyone hurt her that badly in the form of a punch, minus the Rangers. Now I see why that creature was made to fight All Might. Sila said to herself, as she was barely about to keep track of Nomu's speed and could still feel the raw power from its punch. If things continue to go on like this, then I might have you use my Aetherius form to beat that creature. Eraserhead can erase people's powers from one glance alone. Vlad King has an impressive body, reflexes, and overall fighting ability, and that spellcaster of a woman can control her victims however she wants. Tomura talked about each of their abilities but did not see anything special. That's irritating, but it's nothing impressive. When faced with true, devastating power, you three might as well be quirkless children. He said, gained a tone of giggles at the end. The homeroom teacher of one beat soon recovered from Nomu's assault as the man growling at criminal with a righteous fury. I'm not through yet, villain. Vlad King said while struggling to get back on his feet and using his quirk to control the leak of BLD from leaving his body. It will take more than that to finish me. You're hurt, Vlad. Don't push yourself too hard. Aizawa warned his colleague to be careful before his gaze fell onto the Aetherius. What about you? Can you still fight, Sila? He asked with her standing up from the floor. I've been hit with worst in the past, so that was nothing, Sila said with confidence as a demon like her was more durable than a human. You should worry more about yourself than me human. She stated to Aizawa. And look at you too, you're still standing after taking a hit from Nomu. Tomura said while holding out his arms. You three really are so cool. He stated while getting hyped up in excitement. Oh, by the way, heroes. The villain wasn't done, as he was going to say one last thing to them. I am not the final boss, Tomura said as a huge evil grin appeared on his face and pointed a thumb at the black muscular creature next to him. He is. DMN. If that thing really is built to fight All Might, then we're in trouble. Aizawa said while clicking his tongue at the problem before them and thinking of a solution to save them. Sila. Do you think you can control this monster like the other villains? Vlad King asked the demon woman if her can help them like earlier. I've been trying to, but this thing is strong enough to resist my macro curse's effects. Sila said in irritation at the fact her curse has little effect on that black creature. But I think I might be A2 if I release my limiter and use my Aetherius form. She said as her macro curse's power gets stronger in her true form. Then do it. Aizawa said to her with a serious tone. Whatever can help us survive long enough for backup arrive. He said knowing that it would be roughly 5 to 10 minutes before help could be mobilized and get them here. But before Sila could even do anything, a feminine laugh got their attention and they turned to see a hooded figure approaching them. I figured something like this would have happened. The female figure said while walking right up to Tomura. But I'm not surprised since they were weak humans. She included them, which only made Tomura scoff in anger. Who is that? Aizawa, Vlad King, and Sila thought while looking at the newcomer suspiciously. You again. What do you want? Tomura asked in an aggressive manner. Can't you see that I'm a little busy right now after most of my whole party was whipped out before facing the final boss? And here I thought I'd tell that Thrax and our forces have arrived, and Kurogiri managed to scatter those UA brats around the building for our man to pick them off. The female figure informed him, which shocked Aizawa, Vlad King, and Sila as they overheard what she just said. Well, it took him long enough, but at least Kurogiri did his job, Tomura said with a pleasant tone, after hearing the good news that his plan was working. Hey! What do you mean by our students being scattered? Vlad King demanded in anger while getting their attention. Answer me, villains. I'm sorry, but I thought I heard a little buzzing fly in my ear. The female figure said, smiling in a mocking tone while holding a hand to her ear. How about I take care of that? She said, snapping her fingers. Then right out of nowhere, multiple ranger grunts appeared around the central plaza from thin air and surrounded the teachers and Aetherius, much to their surprise. No way, Sila said with wide eyes, as she immediately recognized these creatures along with Aizawa and Vlad King. These are. Vlad King said with a gasp. Ranger villains, Aizawa said, finishing his sentences, as he turned to the robed figure and glared at her suspiciously. Just who in the world are you and how do you have these things? He demanded to know why she was about to summon and control those monsters. Figure didn't answer. The female figure only smirks menacingly before grabbing onto her robes and pulling them away to reveal herself to them. Underneath was a tan-skinned woman wearing golden armor. Her name is Scorpina, one of Rita Repulsa's monsters. I know you. You're Scorpina, one of Rita Repulsa's most powerful and ruthless monsters. Aizawa said remembered seeing her from the Ranger history video. Hearing her name be said with that much disdain brought music to her ears. Scorpina gave another cackle into the air showboating her enjoyment. You are quite knowledgeable, hero. I give you that, Scorpina complimented while summoning a boomerang-like sword from thin air. Glad someone isn't dumb enough to know about me. How are you even here in our world to begin with? Vlad King asked the woman with a glare. Unfortunately, you won't live long enough to tell the tale, Scorpina said pointing her sword at them and giving her foot soldiers a command. All of you get those heroes. But leave the woman alone, as she will be my opponent. Upon hearing that order, the grunts immediately charged forward at Aizawa and Vlad King, who started to fight back against the Ranger foot soldiers as they found it to be a bit more challenging than facing those other criminals. I guess we'll wait a bit before All Might shows up. Until then I think I'll enjoy the show. Tamura said, scratching his neck, as he and Nomu sat this one out and let Scorpina handle this fight before the final boss could arrive. He has known that Scorpina would be able to keep them at bay or probably destroy them until All Might turns up, so he turned around to let Nomu deal with the pro hero himself. Scorpina then made her way to Sila, who glared down at the Ranger villain with a cold expression. It's nice to meet a fellow evildoing like you, Scorpina said with a surprisingly pleasant tone, as the Sila glare didn't fail in the slightest. You're one of those creatures that my MSTR mentioned before, Sila said while remembering how her MSTR would tell her stories of the monsters his predecessors fought. Indeed I am, Sila. Former member of the 9 Demon Gates and the Dark Guild Tartaros. Scorpina said, making the Aetherius look wide-eyed in shock. How do you know about that? Sila asked while getting over her shock and with her gaze hardening even more. The only people who knew about her past were the Rangers, Kuroka, their allies, and her former guild mates. No one else was supposed to know about her true identity, so how does this woman know so much about her even knowing they never met until today? We've been keeping a watchful eye on all the Hero Force Rangers' activity since they made their appearance, and that also goes for friends and allies. One of our members witnessed the battle between you and the Ranger just the other day. Scorpina explained to her. Sila just quietly glared at Scorpina and listened to her talk, as the Ranger villain continued to speak. Which is why I'm offering you the deal of the lifetime, Scorpina said, getting the Demoness full attention. What sort of deal? Sila asked the woman with suspicion. The chance at getting revenge on the Power Rangers, Scorpina said, getting the Aetherius eyes to slightly widen. Think about it for a moment. The Rangers are the reason you were kicked out of your guild and forced to live among these worthless humans. So help us kill them, then my compares and I will offer you a place by our side. We could even help you return back to your former guild. The woman said, holding out her hand to Sila. So what do you say, Sila? We evil begins have to stick out for one another, right? I could return back to Tartaros, back to being a 9 Demon Gate, back to my MSTRS Kyoka. Sila said with a hopeful voice, as she looked toward the ground while thinking about the offer given to her. Going back to Tartaros would be a dream come true, and the Aetherius continue living the life she had before meeting the Rangers. Her time spent reading books in the guild's library, her sanctuary, while ignoring the attention she was receiving from the lesser demons and keeping her mind solely on the books she loved to read. Going out on missions to eliminate dark guilds that Tartaros deemed useless and killing humans that were a potential threat to their goal in the future. Spending her time with her MSTRS as they would engage in their usual SXL activities. And when the time comes they will finally achieve their plan of freeing N from his book to kill their creator Zerif and rule over the world while serving alongside him. This was something that Sila would jump at the opportunity to do in order to return back to her old life. But yet, why was she so hesitant? Do I truly wish to go back to how things were? Sila thought very deeply about her true longing. The thought of leaving her MSTR Ren and the new life he created for her hurt Sila deeply, and she was having second thoughts, as the past few days in this strange world with Ren has changed Sila's outlook on things severely. Her kind saw humans as weaklings and insects and never had given a single thought about cohabiting with humans while only using them for their personal gain. But she was proved wrong after meeting the Power Rangers. While there were still cruel humans out there, that doesn't mean that it applies to all of humanity. Despite all the horrible things she'd done in the past, they still cherish and love her like she was their very own. So is leaving her MSTR really the right choice for the Etherius to make? After a few seconds had passed, Scorpina spoke up to Sila once more for her answer. Have you made your decision yet? Scorpina asked her with a grin and made the Etherius woman look back up at her. It's a tempting offer, but I respectively declined, Sila said, making Scorpina lose her smirk. While it's true that the Rangers were the ones responsible for making me lose everything and the thought of revenge did cross my mind. But my MSTR gave me a new life and reason to live. It would be a dishonor to him and everything he's done for me if I were to betray his trust. So no, I will not join forces with the likes of you. She stated with incredible determination before summoning a number of books around herself and using her curse to float herself into the air while aiming them directly at Scorpina. Sila may still harbor some hatred for humankind, and that will probably never change, but her time with her MSTR and the other Rangers taught the former Demon Gate that not all humans are worthless insects that have no place in the world. While the demons of Tartaros treated her very nicely, the humans of this world made her experience something that she never had while at Tartaros. The bond of having friends and a place to call home. And anyone who was going to take that away from her was the Etherius's enemy. Then you will die alone with the rest of these human trash, Scorpina said in an enraged tone with her sword ready. It's a real pity. We could have used someone with a power like you're in our army. She said with a disappointing sigh. My mind, body, and power only belong to my MSTR and no one else. So if you are his enemy, then you are my enemy as well. Sila said before sending a tornado of books toward Scorpina. Yeah. Scorpina lets a scream of passion and charges at the endless number of books while cutting them away with her sword. Despite the hailstorm of books, Scorpina had no problem slashing and dodging the projectiles that were coming at her from all directions, as the armored woman then released an energy slash attack from her blade that burned all the books around her before jumping into the air Sila to move her sword through the demon. But Sila made a wall of thick books to block Scorpina's sword from hitting her, with Scorpina pushed through and forced Sila back on the ground as the demon dodged another strike from her foe's ruthless assault before landing a hard kick to the side of her head, launching Scorpina across the floor. Scorpina's body slid across the ground for a brief moment before flipping herself upward and onto her knee, as she gazed at Sila with a bloodthirsty grin planted on her face. Not bad, Scorpina said while pushing herself up from the floor, as it looked like that kick didn't do much to her. But you'll have to do better than that to beat me. I intend to do just that, Sila replied back seriously while getting into a combat stance. Landslide Zone, afternoon. Back at the landslide zone, Todoroki, Kozai, and Bondo had just about finished up with the villains they were fighting. So the plan was to scatter us, and then kill us, Todoroki said, huffing with him releasing a frosty breath from his mouth. You were woefully unprepared. The boy bluntly said while glaring coldly at dozens of iced-up immobilized villains with steady contemptuous eyes, having frozen the area in front of him. It looks to me as though you've had no training. You haven't the slightest idea how to use your quirks. He pointed out to the ice-covered enemies before him. Meanwhile, Kozai and Bondo were off behind him, slightly shivering from the temperature drop. Underestimating us because we're high schoolers, a bunch of morons, Kozai comments about the turnout of this fight. I guess they were all talk in the end, Bondo said with a sigh of relief. Todoroki then advances down the hill amongst the frozen trapped, unable to do anything but look in their icy prison at the three UA students in both awe and terror at the fact they lost to a bunch of children. If anything, they were completely at their mercy. One of the frozen villains breathed with exertion. This power, they stopped us the instant we warped here. They shivered from the extremely low temperatures of Todoroki's ice. They're not kids, they're monsters. Another frozen villain exclaimed. So cold. A frozen canine-looking villain stuttered. As the criminals were speechless and covered in ice, Todoroki walked past them deep in thought. So this is what it's like to fight villains, huh? Todoroki thought with a disappointed expression across his face. Just a bunch of thugs. Can't even beat 3 teenagers. He then said, thinking about what those villains said earlier. How do they plan on killing All Might? At first, I thought that they gathered a force of elite criminals who could simply overpower him. Then suddenly out of nowhere, a villain wields a knife in his hand, coming from out of hiding while letting out a battle cry and launching himself at Todoroki to stab the boy. Behind you too, dude. Kozai warned him, as another villain wielding a spear in his hand, attacked the boy from behind. Despite the surprise attacks, Todoroki remained unfazed by this and was ready to counter the 2 villains by stomping his right leg, creating a wave of ice that captured the villain in front of him instantly, before casually stepping out of the way and grabbing the handle of the weapon to freeze the other villain from behind him too, as he frozen both enemies in their tracks without little difficulty. Both Kozai and Bondo slightly gasped, watching how Todoroki had instantly taken care of both villains in front of and behind him, freezing both of them into ice prisons. But that can't possibly be their MSTR plan. Most of these villains are low-level thugs. Just pawns. Todoroki thought while giving the frozen villain behind him a dismissive glare, before he broke off the frozen spear he was holding, upsetting the balance of the ice he'd formed to keep the villain airborne as the villain crashed to the ground. Moreover, those monsters that came with them seemed to be more concerned about Amamiya and the other Power Rangers. That one monster named Thrax even said they couldn't care less about killing All Might, as they see the Rangers more as a threat than the number 1 hero. These 2 groups may be working together, but they clearly have separate goals in mind. He thought, remembering what Ren said about those monsters. Todoroki closed his eyes, thinking more about their situation, and the people responsible for leading this attack on his class. From what I can tell, there are only 4 or 5 truly dangerous people here. And if Amamiya's warning about these monsters is true, then this is going to be more complicated than I originally thought. Todoroki thought about the ringleaders behind this attack on his class. He reopens his eyes while lifting his head with a critical expression on his face. If that's the case, then what we need right now is more information. He then turned his glacé to the 2 boys behind himself before speaking. I need to interrogate these villains for information about their plans for killing All Might. Right. We'll leave that to you. Kozai said as he thought it was a good idea to get info out of the villain. Todoroki turned towards one of the frozen trapped villains and was about to interrogate them for information, but stopped in his tracks when he heard the sound of a few ranger grunts appearing before them. SHT. These things again. Kozai said with him and Bondo backing up a bit from the creatures. More of them, eh? Todoroki thought nonchalantly while narrowing his eyes at the monsters before stepping back up the hill to them without fear. The both of you, stay back. I'll take care of this. He declared while the 2 Class 1B kids stood behind him. Remember what Ren said. These things are different from the other villains. Bondo warned them. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten, Todoroki said before sending another wave of ice traveling on the ground surface, and in a single instant he froze them all, encased in ice. Nuances. He thought, looking at the monsters trapped in ice, in due time they would be destroyed. DMN man, you got them all in an instant, Kozai said, being impressed at Todoroki's level at controlling his quirk so easily. Almost feels like he didn't need us to fight those criminal from before, Bondo said, feeling a bit outclassed by the quirk dual wielder. Todoroki didn't reply back to them and was about to resume gathering information when suddenly he heard sounds of something breaking. Todoroki looked around and saw some of those monsters break free from the ice. What? The boy was taken aback by what he just witnessed. SHT. They broke free. Cozy Eye shouted in shock to see the monsters let loose. But how? Even those villains could break free from Todoroki's ice. Bondo asked, being just as equally shocked. How did some of them escape? Then they noticed some of the grunts were carrying weapons and uses them to free themselves from the ice. Todoroki might have underestimated these seemingly feral beasts, and Ren did warn him about not taking these things seriously, but before the three boys could do something, Ren made his sudden appearance by making a mad dash toward the monsters with the Dino saber in hand while holding the blade reverse grip. Ren made good work of the ranger grunts in only a few seconds, with him running past both a Vivix and Tenga warrior while quickly slashing them across the chest before turning backward to the right to stab a batling in the stomach, who had his sword raised to strike at the ranger with it stopping halfway. Then Ren immediately removed his saber from the batling and spun over on his left side to use his sword to block a grinder's attack while pushing the robot slightly back, and then did the same thing to a henchman by blocking a spar aim at him as Quantron changed in next for an assault on the ranger. But Ren shows this coming as he avoids the Quantron's weapon with lightning speed reflexes before jabbing the grunt in the gut that makes it fall over. He heard something that made the boy look back and see a putrid, Cyclobot, and Putty charging at him from behind. Then Ren quickly twirled himself around to cut down all three enemies at one with a single strike before moving on to more foot soldiers to eliminate. When did he dash? Todoroki, though, as he was struck by surprise, it was happening so fast that not even he could up with how he was moving. Ren was slashing at those creatures with such skill and speed that the enemy couldn't fight back in time, as the quirkless both finished them off with one last wide spinning slash before stopping himself on one knee while every single monster around the boy exploded in oblivion. Whoa! Bondo said, jaw dropped while staring at Ren. He took them all down in an instant, Cozy Eye said in awe at his classmate's skills. Ren stood up straight before putting away his weapon and turned to look at others. You okay, guys? He asked him. Todoroki returned to his normal face and nodded. Yes. I think I owe you one. He said to him as Ren and Rin approached the three. Then Toru turned back visible once the danger had passed and ran up to the others with a smile. Nice going, guys. You five really showed them, huh? Toru happily said as she enjoyed watching her classmates kick bad guy butt. Well, it was nothing really, since Ren did most of the work, Rin said, rubbing the back of his head at how he was struggling to fight those grunts. But it looks like you three took care of everything on your own. For the most part, at least. Ren said, looking at the shocked villains that were still stuck in the ice. I told you to be careful when it came to fighting ranger enemies. And these guys are just foot soldiers, as the United Alliance of Evil have even more dangerous and powerful monsters in their ranks. He explained about the enemies the rangers fight. Todoroki narrowed his eyes at Ren. You seem to know a lot about them, huh? He said, having his suspicions. The way he did things was like he knew what he was doing. In fact, he got to see that once he and the other rangers saw those monsters, they were ready to charge into battle against them without hesitation. Ren recognized that Todoroki might be even more suspicious than before. Like I said, there were enemies from the past that ranger teams before us had fought. But this is not the time to be talking about that since we're in the middle of a villain attack. He said to him, trying to avoid the topic, but it was enough to make the icy hot teen believe that Ren was hiding something about the monsters. We have more things to worry about right now. Like looking for the others, so we can launch our counterattack. He said, about to leave the zone to find the others. Hold on, Todoroki told him, keeping his serene face while stopping the quirkless boy in his track. We have to find out why these villains think that they can kill All Might and you rangers, he said to him. We can get the information we need, right now. He said, looking at one of the frozen thugs wincing in pain. Ren gave it a thought for a few seconds before speaking back to him. I agree with you. We need to find out how they're gonna try to achieve said objectives. Ren said to him, crossing his arms. The 6 students then approached the frozen thugs, who were still unable to move and painfully groaning from the cold. "You sure they're not gonna do nothing?" Toru asked while looking at the trapped criminals. "Don't worry, they're frozen with my quirk. They're not gonna do anything to us. They'll be like this once we get help from the school," Todoroki said as they walked up to one of the frozen villains. "YYYWONDERFUL freaks," the villain said, agonized anger, as he was shivering from the cold. "Says the ones who tried to kill or torture a group of high schoolers for fun," Ren said coldly while walking over in front of the man. "What? Were you expecting us to be scared and freeze up the moment you got here? You really are simple-minded idiots." Todoroki walked over to Ren's side casually to help with the interrogation as well. "Okay, here's how this is going to play out. We're going to ask you some questions and you're going to answer them honestly. Got it?" Ren demanded with a serious tone. "That guy, the one with the blue-haired guy that's leading all of you. What's his name?" "NGH. As if we'd just tell you, brats, anything." The man grunted painfully. "Figures he wouldn't spill the beans so easily," Toru said, scoffing at the man's stubbornness. "Answer him," Todoroki demanded coldly before stepping in front of the villain. "Because if you don't, then I'll make things much colder for you." He threatened the poor villain with him flinching at the boy's cold glare. "Listen well. If you stay frozen, your cells will slowly die as your body succumbs to frostbite and hypothermia," he stated, making the villains whimper in fear from the information as tears formed in the eyes. "Luckily for you, I want to be a hero. So I'd like to avoid any unnecessary cruelty." Todoroki then reached out his right hand in front of the villain's face as cold frost air came out of it, signaling that he could make the ice he needed at any moment he wanted. "But I can only do that if you tell us how you plan to kill All Might and the Power Rangers," Todoroki said, looking at the villain with emotionless eyes. "That's the only way you'll survive. And if you still don't feel like talking, I can just dissect you right here and now," Ren threatened him next before pulling out a sword and pointing at the villain, inches away from the man's face and freaking him out even more. "After that, I'll take your organs and feed them to some pigs. Maybe the first thing I'll cut off is your ball," he said, which made the villain go pale and freak out his classmates expect for Todoroki from the thought. "Better talk now, before we both do something we regret later," he said in a dark voice, aiming the blade at the neck of the thug. This was out of the ordinary for him. Normally Ren wouldn't resort to something like this, but he wasn't in the mood to play nice right now. Like he said before, he was a little pissed off right now and didn't really mush for the trash lying before him. "Whoa, guys. Don't you think that's a bit extreme?" Cozy Eye asked how dark the two boys were getting in order to get information from the criminal. "No," Ren said bluntly while turning his scowl back at the four students who weren't interrogating the villains. "These animals came here with the intent to kill All Might, and since he isn't here they decided to target us just for fun in order to hurt him." He reminded them that the four students were unable to respond. "As you can see, one of my classmates clearly doesn't mind your death much at this point if he's willing to go this far," Todoroki said back to the frozen villain as they were not messing around. "Considering what we said, and starting to answer our questions if you know what is good for you," he said, giving him one last warning. The villain looked at the two students as if they were crazy before finally breaking under the pressure of their threats. "Heek. Alright, I'll talk. I'll talk," the villain said, being terrified out of his mind for his well-being. "Smart choice," Ren said, lower his weapon, and Todoroki pulled back his hand. "Now that we've gotten your full attention, let's try this again. The villain who brought you here. Who is he and what's his plan to kill All Might?" he asked. Okay, look. The guy in charge didn't really walk us through his big plan," the villain said, honestly being terrified for his life, as he told them the truth. "He just said we were gonna storm UA, and we'd get to have some fun. I kinda stopped tuning in after that," he exclaimed, most to the students' anger. "And you didn't care that his plan involved attacking a bunch of school kids?" Rin asked in a dangerous tone with his eyes narrowed. I attacked you, didn't I? Don't you think you got an answer there? I don't give a DMN who I use my quirk on just so long as I get to use it. Do you have any idea how frustrating having to repress such an awesome power is? The man said without remorse for his actions. You came because you were bored, Ren said with his voice full of disgust and rage. You're nothing but some of the earth. You don't deserve to have any power, super or otherwise. Yeah, like the words of some snot-nosed boy are gonna dash, the man insulted him before Todoroki placed a hand over the criminal's mouth and froze his trap shut to prevent the villain from speaking further. He's absolutely right about you, Todoroki said coldly as he was disgusted by the villain as well. You're nothing but criminal some. He said with the man trying to yell, but all they could hear was muffled voices. Looks like we want to get anything good out of this sack of CRP. Let's try talking to someone else. Ren said before he and the others glanced over to a bird-like villain lying frozen on the ground. He flinched nervously with the UA student's eyes on him now. You bird guy, Ren said before walking over to the villain and bending his knees down to his level. Are you going to cooperate here like your friend or do we to make good on our threats? He asked the bird villain looking even more hostile than before. No, please. I'll talk. Just don't hurt me. The bird villain shouted as he was scared of these kids. Good, now same question. Who is the one leading you guys? Ren asked him in a serious manner, as the villain swallowed in fear and finally found his voice. The guy's name is Shigaraki Tamura. The guy asked us if we wanted to make waves in the crime world, and we agreed. He gathered all of us to kill All Might. The man sang like a canary. We already know that I just wanted the guy's name, Ren said before looking over at Todoroki. You wanna ask any questions? Todoroki blinked before nodding and turning to the frozen villain before him. How do you plan on killing All Might? Todoroki asked him. It's the monster with the beak, alright? Yeah, that giant thing. It's called Nomu. That's what that Shigaraki guy said, that's all I know I swear. The man confessed. Nomu. Todoroki replied back with narrow eyes, as he remembered seeing something like that appearing next to their leader. It doesn't feel human to me. That's because it's an artificial human that was created to kill All Might. Shigaraki kept gloating on and on about that thing as if it was invincible. Apparently, it's been bioengineered to have multiple quirks in one body. The combo it has inside of it is supposedly enough to kill even All Might. The villain told them. What he said surprised the UA students to learn about this terrible truth about this weapon meant to kill All Might. Multiple quirks. But that's impossible. Toru commented in shock to hear this from the frozen villain. Ren's expression remained the same as he processed those words. Multiple quirks. He didn't think something like that could have been possible as it was incredibly rare for someone to be born with two powers. There is nothing in this world that is invincible. Ren quoted out loud before asking something else. Can you tell us that Nomu monster quirks? He asked the villain, but he shook his head frantically. Boss guy never told. He just went on about All Might more. I swear that weirdo is obsessed with the guy. I don't know anything else, I swear. The bird villain said honestly to them. Ren could feel this guy's emotions from his heart thanks to the red lion's power and saw that the man was telling the truth. One last question. Those monsters that came with you guys. Why are they helping you? Ren asked with a serious expression as if this was the most important question. I don't know kid. That mist guy did say something about another group would help us with the attack too and warned us not to get in their way. But other than that I don't know anything else, honest. The bird villain said as he didn't know anything about those monsters. I see. Ren said as he knew it would be pointless to ask the villain any more questions before standing back up. Anyway, thanks for your cooperation, have fun freezing to death. he said uncaringly, making the villain grasp in fear before turning back to his classmates. We're done here, so let's just leave them like this and move out. He told the others. Agreed, I wasn't planning on setting them free anyway. They provided us with the information we needed, but they will be in a lot of pain. Todoroki said nonchalantly. Yeah, and letting them loose might come back and bite us later. Let's just leave these villains here to freeze until the heroes arrive to take them to prison. Ren said, shrugging his shoulders. These two, they're ruthless. Some of the conscious villains thought in terror. Then the 6 students left the villains there, either to search for their classmates or to check up and see how their teachers and Sila were faring. So what are the next moves, guys? Rin said with the group stopping to talk about their plans. Mr. Aizawa, Vlad King, and Sila are in the center plaza where Shigaraki and that thing, Nomu is. Ren said to the others. They can handle those low-level thugs with no problem, but against Shigaraki, Nomu, and ranger enemies. They won't last very long, Todoroki stated bluntly. These guys may low-level thugs and don't have the capacity of trying to take us down, but the real dangerous ones here are that warp villain Kurojiri, Shigaraki Tamura, that Nomu, and those monsters. He said as these villains were complete idiots and nothing but pawns to that Shigaraki guy and the Alliance. Blunt, but true. Artificial human or not, whatever that Nomu thing is still wasn't human no matter how you look at it. It probably was human at some point, but not anymore. It is just a walking doll with no purpose except the one that was given to it once it was created. Then they're the united alliance of evil and the damage they could cause along with the number of monsters they have under their control. That aside, our classmates should be able to handle themselves against these villains. But if my teammates were warped in the same places with them, then they could easily deal with the monsters. Ren said, having faith in his classmates making it out of this alive. True, since you rangers are the strongest out of both classes, Kozai said in agreement. Then we should head over to where our teachers and Sila are to see if we can provide some backup until Kuroka gets back here with the heroes, Todoroki suggested to them. I was planning on suggesting that, Ren said with a nod back. But we're going to need some backup if we're going to fight those villains, especially if they have an all-might killing weapon and an army of monsters backing them. He said, knowing he needed to regroup with his team if they stand a fighting chance. The ranger then turned his head to Toru, Kozai, Rin, and Bondo before asking them something. This is going to be really dangerous, so if you guys don't want to come with us to fight, then you should back to the front entrance. Yeah, I might just take you up on that suggestion since I'm not as strong as you two are, Kozai said, rubbing the back of his head awkwardly. I wouldn't be any good in a fight either, Toru said as she knew she wouldn't be much help. Same here, Bondo said with his head down in shame. I joined you later, once I knew these 3 will be okay. Rin said as he will concern for his classmates' safety. Don't beat yourself up about, no reason to feel assumed about admitting you can fight, Rin said, trying to lift their spirits before using his replication agility to create a clone of himself. This clone of me will escort you 4 safely back to the front entrance in case you run into more enemies. He said with the copy himself nodding in agreement. That's so nice of you. Toru happily said, feeling a bit safe. Thanks so much, Ren. Yeah, be sure to give those stupid villains hell. Kozai said, raising a fist up to them. I'll return to help you as soon as they're safe. Rin promised him. Best of luck to you both, Bondo said, wishing them luck. Right, stay safe you guys, Ren replied back. Just leave the rest to us, Todoroki said to them nonchalantly. Alright, come you 4. Ren's clone said with him walking ahead, as the 4 students followed right behind him back to the front entrance of the USJ. Ren and Todoroki watched them leave the zone before the thought crossed the ranger's mind, as he just got an idea. I might as well since this is an emergency, Ren muttered to himself before holding up his morpher with Todoroki looking at the ranger with a raised eyebrow. What are you doing? Todoroki asked as he saw the device on his arm starting to glow gold, as two balls of light came out of it. One was black and the other was red, as the two balls of light then shot toward the sky and went in the direction where the center plaza is located. Todoroki just blinked in confusion while watching the two balls of light leaving. "What in the?" he said before Ren made another clone of himself. "You know what to do," Ren said to his clone with a serious expression. "Go." "Okay." His clone replied while understanding his mission before using his ninja speed, disappearing in a blur and following the two balls of light. "What was that all about?" Todoroki asked what his classmate had just done. "Making sure our teachers at least have a fighting chance," Ren said back to Todoroki before saying something else. "Also, given the situation, we're going to need all the powerful allies we can get," he said, confusing the dual-color hair boy even more. "What do you mean?" Todoroki asked, not knowing where Ren was going with this. "I'm talking about temporarily making you in a Power Ranger," Ren said, making Todoroki look shocked by the answer. "You want to make me into a ranger?" Todoroki asked with wide eyes. "Yes, but only temporary," Ren said as Todoroki was about to refuse, but was cut off by the rangers raising his hand and a serious expression across his face. "Look, Todoroki, I already said this before, but you need to understand the gravity of the situation we're about to face," he said with a tone to make sure to get his point across. "The enemies we're about to face will be like nothing you have fought before, and if that wasn't bad enough, they have an all-might killing super weapon with them. So it would really put my mind at ease if you could fight at our level too. You are one of the strongest people in the class and probably the only person in class I can trust with this. So please." He finished. For a moment, Todoroki just stares at him. He will be the first to admit that he had his eye on the quirkless boy and the other rangers since the quirk assessment, but hasn't initiated the conversation, except for that one time at combat training. There's a secret they carry along with them, and he had a feeling Kuroka and Sila also knew about it, along with the other UA teachers. "Okay, I'll do it. But under one condition," Todoroki said to him. "What is it?" Ren asked with a raised eyebrow. "I want you to tell me everything about what you and the other rangers connect to those monsters," Todoroki said, as he wanted his answers about the United Alliance of Evil and how the rangers were wrapped up in this. Ren looked at his classmate for a few seconds while thinking about the conditions, before he sighed to himself in frustration and then gave him an answer. "Fine, but it will have to be until later if we somehow survive this SHT show," Ren said to him, as this wasn't the best time. "Also, you can't tell anyone about what we decided." "I can accept that. Whatever it is you all are hiding, there's no need to worry about me saying anything," Todoroki said, agreeing to those terms. "So what do I have to do to become a ranger?" "Just hold out your hand and I'll take care of the rest," Ren said to the boy. Todoroki quietly nodded before holding up his right hand with Ren pointing his MSTR morpher at his classmate's way. "Active, temporary ranger mode," Ren said as the MSTR morpher started to glow gold again, and a white ball of light came out of it. The white light headed straight to Todoroki's hand and the light died down, which revealed to be the Drago morpher. "The Drago morpher," Ren said with crossed arms while eyeing the morpher in Todoroki's hand with a curious gaze. "Interesting that you were given that morpher. Why? Is there something wrong with me having it?" Todoroki asked in a confused voice. "Oh, no," Ren said, shaking his head to him. "It's just that the ranger who wielded that morpher had a very interesting history is all," he said, putting his mind at ease. "Anyway, just place the morpher on your left wrist," he told him with the boy doing as he said. "How do I use it?" Todoroki asked while looking at the device attached to his wrist. "You'll know when the time is right. Just trust your instincts," Ren said to him with a smile and thumbs up. "I believe in you." "If you say so," Todoroki said nonchalantly as he just trusted his classmate's experience when it came to Power Ranger stuff. The two looked at each other for a second, and the two boys began walking the other way to locate their classmates. As they were walking, Ren moved his MSTR morpher close to his face and spoke to Hollow Tommy. "Tommy, I need you to contact the others and tell them what our plan is for me," Ren said quietly to his mentor, so Todoroki didn't hear him. Hollow Tommy didn't reply back but did exactly what Ren asked him to do, as the holographic AI began to contact the other Hero Force Rangers around the rescue facility. "You're strong," Todoroki said to Ren without warning. Ren thought he was hearing things and Todoroki just suddenly said that out of the blue. He blinked as a response, not really sure what to say. "Thanks, I guess. You're pretty strong yourself with that ice of yours," Ren said back, as they engaged in a conversation. Todoroki gave him a serious look. "During the battle trial, you displayed your skills with fine concentration and didn't look tired afterward. And now, with those monsters from earlier," he said continuing. "Despite being quirkless, you displayed impressive skills that caught me off guard." Ren scratched his cheek, looking a little uncomfortable. "Well, I had to work my butt off to get where I am. As you said, I don't exactly have a quirk like the rest of you, so I either use my ranger power or hand-to-hand combat. Relying on your quirk all the time will only get you into tough situations," he stated to the boy. "That's also true, but there's something about your ranger power that feels different from the others," Todoroki continued. "This is probably the most I've ever heard him talk. It's like I'm talking to Yui or Sila right now." Ren thought inwardly, as Todoroki is usually so quiet but now all of a sudden he's so talkative. "Thank goodness I'm used to holding a conversation with stoic types like him," he thought before starting running with Todoroki doing the same. "In any case, we need to hurry. Every second matters. We should head to the closest zone to us and try finding the other students," Todoroki said running beside him. "Yeah, but let's hope for our sake that they can hold out until help arrives," Ren said back with the two boys to pick up the pace. "Ah," Todoroki responded, following him. Flood Zone, afternoon. Back at the flood zone, Midoriya, Tsuyu, Minetta, Shiozaki, and Kanoko were on board the ship, surrounded by villains who were in the water, preparing to go on the ship to attack the children. 4 of the 5 students were ready for a fight. But for the little pervert, he was scared as hell, not wanting to fight real villains. What do you mean, fight? Are you crazy?" Minetta shouted at the others with teary eyes and sweat running down his face while comically freaking out after hearing Midoriya's plan. "These guys might be able to kill All Might. If that wasn't bad enough, they have a bunch of monsters helping them, and you think we can take them? Did you hit your head when we got warped here?" While Minetta continues to act like a crybaby, the Midoriya, Tsuyu, and Shiozaki keep observing their surroundings and look at the water below with serious expressions at the villains who haven't made a move just yet on them, while thinking of how to handle the villains. They completely ignored Minetta's outburst while Kanoko was slowly patting him on the back to calm him down. "The best plan is for us to just wait for a real pro from the UA to come and save us." Minetta continued to cry, as he danced around in a panic state with tears falling from his eyes. "That idea will only just get us killed," Shiozaki thought while shaking her head at the boy's idea. "The villains won't let us wait for help to arrive." "Think about it," Midoriya said while thinking. "Those villains down there clearing have an advantage in the water and assume that's where we fight," he said, analyzing the situation. "Are you even listening to me?" Minetta yelled, but the others didn't pay him any attention. If that's the case, they must have known what was inside the USJ before warping in. Tsuyu pointed out loud. "Yeah, but for a group with such careful planning. There's something that sticks out to me, something that doesn't add up." "They sent you here, Tsuyu," Midoriya said to his frog girlfriend, who looked back at him with confusion. "Ribbit," Tsuyu said while tilting her head to the side. "WW, what do you mean by TT that?" Kanoko asked in curiosity. "Yeah, why does it matter that she's here?" Minetta cried out. "It means that the villains probably have no idea what our quirks are," Midoriya said, making the others realize that fact. Ribbit, Tsuyu croaks before turning her head in the direction of the fire zone. If they knew I was a frog, they would have sent me into that fire zone over there instead of somewhere full of water. You've got a point there, Midoriya. They sent Tsuyu here to this zone, where she clearly has an advantage on water. Shiozaki said while looking at the frog girl. And like I said before, they probably separated us because they didn't know what we could do, and planned to overpower us once we were in smaller groups, Midoriya exclaimed as the villains glared at them. Easier to pick us off one by one. We can use that to our advantage. They don't know what our quirks are. So, for all they know, the three of us could be super powerful. What makes you think that? Shiozaki asked him. Look, see, Midoriya said, with Shiozaki looking to see that all the villains in the water were showing signs of being a little hesitant or unsure in attacking them. None of them are trying to climb into the boat. That proves that they're a little unsure. But, that means that they aren't going to underestimate us either. They're being smart and playing it safe. For now, that is. He stated his theory to his friends before looking their way. Listen up, we may be surrounded, but we have an advantage in this situation if we play this smart. Then everyone there bent down and gathered around to come up with a plan to fight back against the villains in the water. Okay, so let's talk quirks. I'll go first if you want. Tsuyu said, explaining what she can do first. Obviously, I can jump high. And cling to pretty much to any wall. Then, of course, there's my tongue. I can stick it out about 20 meters. And I can spit out stuff out of my stomach so I can clean it. That's not really useful. Finally, I also have some toxic mucus. It just stings a bit. She said, with Minetta gasping from the thought of her mucus. Secrete mucus? Minetta thought, with a blush on his cheeks. We can only use my tongue and my jump here. Forget about the last things. Tsuyu said, finishing the list of things she could do with her quirk. Mucus. Minoru mumbled to himself before getting slapped upside the head by a vine. Ah! He screamed in pain with the religious girl glaring at him. Stay focused. Shiozaki scolded the boy for his impure thoughts. Our lives hang in the balance. She hissed, making Minetta clamp his mouth shut. I figured you were powerful, but that's crazy, Midoriya said, being a little impressed at what she could do and making the frog girl blush a bit from the compliment. He then held up his right fist while looking at it, before explaining what he could do next. I'll go next. I can amplify all of my physical abilities depending on how much power I use, but it comes at a price if I go beyond the maximum output my body can withstand at the moment. It's a double-edged sword until I can control it. He said before activating his newest quirk to display to the other hero students, as shadowy tendrils slithered around his hand. Then a few days ago, I unlocked a new power called Black Whip. It lets me generate shadows to manipulate as I see fit, like for capturing a target or binding onto something. He said before pulling out his morpher. And lastly, there are my ranger powers. It would take too long to explain everything I can do with them, but let's just say my abilities are vast when I use them. He finishes with the mushroom girl going next. My turn, Kanoko said nervously out loud to the best of her ability. My quirk allows me to spread various types of fungus SSS spores from my body. She said as she activated it, and a bunch of mushrooms started growing on the wall of the ship. The spores will quickly grow into full-grown mushrooms once they make contact with a solid surface. The mushrooms can grow from various surfaces, including my SSSS surroundings, my own body, and even an opponent's body. They only last for 2 to 3 hours and the spores spread better in a humid environment. Then it was the religious girl's turn. I guess it is my turn then, Shiozaki said before clearing her throat to speak. Mine is vines, as you can already tell, with the vines being my hairstyle. If I were to use it that much, my hair would be long gone. But since we're in a zone full of water, I can grow it back quickly. I can create a shield from any attack with the vines. Plus, like Tsuyu's tongue and Midoriya's black whip, my quirk can capture a couple of villains from attacking us. Finally, another move where I can create an area full of vines so it can make contact with any enemy. She said before turning to Minetta, being the last one. What about you? The purple-haired teen reached up and plucked one of the ball from his head before a new one grew quickly to take its place. I've got these sticky ball, Minetta lisped to them before he placed the ball on a wall beside himself. Their strength varies. Depending on how I'm feeling, they might stick to something a whole day. He patted the ball with his gloved hand. They grow back as fast as I pull them off. But I'll bleed if I use too many. Oh, and they don't stick to me. I just bounce right off them. He finished his quirk explanation. Then there was an awkward silence for a moment with the other hero course students looking blankly at Minetta. The small boy looks at them until tears form out of his eyes, causing him to cry again comically. Hey. Don't look at me like that. This is why I said we should wait for the real heroes. My quirk is totally unfit for battle. Minetta cried as the 4 sweat drops. No, you have an incredible power. Midoriya tried to assure him. Really? We just have to figure out how to use it. Yes, we were just surprised by how your quirk works is all, Shiozaki said in agreement. Why yeah? Kinoko said awkwardly. Yup, Tsuyu said nodding. Oh god, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die ee. And it's gonna be all your fault, Midoriya. Wah. Minetta cried out overdramatic. Minetta, will you please shut up? Tsuyu called out to him as his whining was getting real annoying. You panicking isn't helping our situation. The frog-like girl completely missed how her boyfriend's expression turned darker, angrier at his words. Almost like he just struck a very sensitive nerve. But it only lasted for a second before she forced herself to exhale and turn her attention back to the class pervert. We have to find a way to regroup with the rest of our class, and to do that, we need to get off this ship. Midoriya nodded to her in agreement her statement before speaking to Minetta next. Surely, Minetta. Get your SHT together. Midoriya said with a serious and slightly irritated tone. If we don't fight then we'll die before the other teachers even get the chance to show up. He said with Minetta still refusing to listen to them. So instead of sitting ducks, you want us to be lambs for the slaughter? Minetta said in hysterics. You maniacs really are insane. He was still panicking, but it took a tongue slap from Tsuyu to bring him back to reality. Thank you. Midoriya said to his girlfriend. No problem, Ribbit. Tsuyu said with satisfaction. So are you really intolerable right now? Shiozaki remarked, now getting annoyed with Minetta too. Now unless you have something helpful to say, be quiet and follow our lead. Also in case I need to remain you, our classmates are fighting for their lives against villains at this very moment. Hearing the change of tone in his voice, Minetta froze and gulped. Before they could say more to bring back his classmates' confidence, Shiozaki noticed something that made her eyes wide in shock. Look out! Shiozaki warned the others and made them turn back around to see what it was. They saw a giant arm made of water rising above them, as one of the villains there grew tired of waiting around and used their quirk on the UA kids by using the giant water arm to cut the boat in half with a single strike. But Shiozaki acted quickly and used power to create a large wall of vines that shielded them and the boat from the villain's attack, as the giant water arm dispels. I'm starting to get bored, one of the villains in the water said, as they decided to make their move on the students. Let's get the show on the road. It seems that the villains have grown tired of waiting and decided to make the first move, Shiozaki said while spearing out her vines around the ship to defend her classmates from any of the other villains' attacks. That's a great power, Tsuyu pointed out as that attack could have sunk the ship if it hit them. The ship would have been done for if it wasn't for Shiozaki. CRP. We're out of time. We gotta do something now. Midoriya stated to them as Minetta started crying again and ran over to the side of the ship. You wa! Minetta screamed and started throwing his ball into the water at the villains in a desperate act of panic. Minetta! Don't freak out! Midoriya yelled at the shorter boy while he threw the ball. As the ball landed in the water, Midoriya quickly grabbed Minetta by the shoulders to stop him and shook him. Minetta pointed at the villains while looking at the ranger with teary eyes. You gotta calm down. The last thing you should be doing is freaking out and make them guess your quirk. Midoriya exclaimed as he realized Minetta just revealed his quirk, taking the element of surprise away from one of them. He then looked over the railing before pausing for a moment when he noticed that the villains were moving away from Minetta's sticky ball floating in the water. What the hell are these things? The shark villain asked while trying his best to push the purple orbs in the water away without touching them. Wait, they're afraid to touch them, Midoriya thought, as he noticed that the villains were moving away from Minetta's sticky ball floating in the water. Let's sink the boat, and once they're in the water, they don't stand a chance against us. The shark villain suggested to the others villains with them now ready to attack the students. Hearing what they were playing made Midoriya's eyes wide as he knew that they would be sitting dukes with the villains having the advantage in the water before turning his head to Shiozaki. Shiozaki! Midoriya yelled to his other girlfriend to get her attention. You need to use your vines to keep them from sinking the ship, until I can come up with a plan to get us out of here in one piece. He told her with a serious tone. Right. You can leave this one to me. Shiozaki said with a serious expression before standing and spearing out her vines around the ship to defend her classmates from any of the other villains' attacks. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, multiple vines popped out from the water, snatching every villains that surrounded the boat. They were struggling to get out, but the vines proven to be too strong to break free. The Lord will never forgive you for what you try to do to us. You will be punished for your crimes. Shiozaki yelled with righteous fury. Quickly, Midoriya. I don't know how long I can keep them at bay. Right. Midoriya said as he began to brainstorm a bunch of ideas. Minetta backed into the wall of the ship. We're fish food. So, Minetta. Tsuyu said, getting his attention, as she looked at him and had a question in her mind. Are you really sure the hero thing is right for you? She asked the panicking teen. The way he was acting at the moment, it was a surprise he passed the entrance exam. I concur as well. Acting like a pervert is one thing, but being a crowd at such a critical moment is unbecoming of a future hero. Shiozaki said, looking awfully disappointed at Minetta's behavior up till now. I still have no idea how you even made it in, but you're a hero course student for some reason. You shouldn't be panicking and crying and being a nuisance. Minetta's head snapped towards two girls with more tears spurting from his eyes. Shut up. It's weirder not to be scared right now. Minetta yelled back while crying and babbling. We just got out of junior high a little while ago. I didn't think I'd be facing death a few days after starting UA. I can't believe I'm gonna die without ever getting to touch Yaoyorozu's or Kuroka's bub. He stated as this was the final straw that finally set off Midoriya. Minetta's wailing suddenly cut off as Midoriya grabbed him by his costume collar and slammed Minetta hard with his back against the wall in the same manner Ren did to the little perv back in the locker, as Minetta froze when he saw the look in Midoriya's eyes. Are you seriously still thinking about stuff like that right now with a villain attack going on? Midoriya shouted with a fierce look on his face, as he did not taking kindly to the boy's comment about his leader girlfriends. Are you kidding me, Minetta? Even after Ren gave you that warning back in the locker, you're still pulling stupid SHT? He called out in anger, with Minetta's stupidity and cowardness had obviously pissed him off. On the side, the three girls also shared in agreement to Midoriya's statement about Minetta's behavior with Tsuyu and Kinoko both nodding while having blank expression on their faces, and Shiozaki had a look of sheer rage appear in her eyes while still holding off the villains in the water from sinking the ship. You're not only a disgusting pervert but coward on top of it. Why are you even in the hero course if you're just going to cause problems for the rest of us? Be grateful the rest of us are taking this seriously, and you can be DMN sure I'm going to report you when we get out of here. Midoriya questioned in anger with Minetta having a quick flashback about the locker room incident while tears were streaming down his face in terror. If you want to sit here and continue being a coward, then by all means be my guest. But I'm going to fight because it's my job, because it's what a hero does, okay, but I can't do this and babysit you. It doesn't matter what you did before coming to UA or what you were, if you step up today, at this very moment, you are a hero. He said before letting go of Minetta, making him fall on his back. The ranger looked down and straight into Minetta's eyes with a serious glacé, as he still had more to say to the little coward. We don't have time to be sitting around and doing nothing. As we speak, our classmates are fighting for their lives against these villains. Now is not the time to be a coward, Minetta. Man up and face your fears or else it could cost you your life. We can't allow them to win and get away with this. We have to put our lives on the line and do the best we can so that we can live to see tomorrow and put a stop to their evil plans. That is part of what it means to be a hero. Midoriya replied with absolute seriousness before taking a step back from the small boy. Once we survive this, and we are going to survive this, you need to take a really good look at yourself, Minetta. What's the point of being a hero if all you're going to do is save yourself? With him saying his piece, he turned back around to face the villains in the water. Tsuyu, Kanoko, and Shiozaki was looking at their boyfriend being impressed while slightly blushing at him for calming down Minetta with just a few words. Meanwhile, Minetta was sitting there and brought his knees to his chest while hugging himself in uncertainty as he thought about the fearless green-haired teen staring down at the villains. DMN at Midoriya, you BSTRD, do you ever do anything uncool? Minetta screamed in his head with frustration, and began to accept the fact that they did indeed have to fight, so he sucked it up. Listen up. No one's going to die. Midoriya said with absolutely confidence. An enemy that's certain of their victory is bound to make a mistake. All Might said something along those lines in a TV interview a while back. He said remembering his mentor words. What does that mean? Minetta cried, then he let out a gasp as he saw Midoriya's shaking fist. But it was not in fear, only anger with the ranger readying himself for what must be done. Now's our chance, Midoriya said with determination. We can beat them. And if our current strength isn't enough, then we just need to dig deep and surpass our limits. He turned his gaze towards 4 students, who gasped at the look on his face and were left shocked by his words. The resolve in his voice was so strong, it instantly reminded them of Ren, especially since they were well aware of their friendship. But despite his words of encouragement, Kanoko looked like she was having an anxiety attack with everything that was happening. Can I do this? Can I really use my quirk to stop the villain? No, I'll just mess things up like I always do. Just like in junior high. Kanoko thought as she remembers the slander she got for her quirk in junior high. Hey, Kanoko. Someone called out to Kanoko and looked up to see it was Midoriya looking at her. Why yes. Kanoko replied back nervously. I know you're scared. But don't be. I know you can do this. I believe in you. Midoriya said with a smile as Kanoko looked at him as her eyes were revealed as the wind blew by. They were wide and rather cat-like, tilted inwards with rather long lower eyelashes, and her irises were warm brown color. Kanoko's pupils were little black crosses, both together highly resembling the caps of cross-sliced shiitake mushrooms. Kanoko Komori wasn't a brave person. She knew it, her family knew it, her friends knew it, and as she grew up and told the world of her aspirations, they all told her that she should choose another dream. The world of heroes was scary and mean, and meek little Kanoko, born with a gentle heart, would never last in such a violent world. But that's fine. Kanoko always said with a bashful smile. Because I don't have to fight. Which was true, she could just pour her focus into helping people out, in the little ways that they needed. Idol heroes, like Iwabumi and Pop Step, do it all the time, so why couldn't she? Not every hero sought to fight the big, bad, scary monsters of this world. After all, there were plenty out there who helped to find missing dogs, or helped to clean up the trash in a city park. There were even a few who made sure that the homeless had proper food and shelter every week or so. She could be a hero like that, in a way where she didn't need to be brave, and for the longest time, she was content with her outlook. But as she watches her new boyfriend ready to run headfirst into danger to protect everyone and tell her that he believed in her, then something inside her changed. The same green-haired boy who she fell in love with jumped at every conversation, who stuttered and shied away from physical contact, the same boy who possessed terrifying monstrous power. And at this very moment, he was throwing his fears to the side to do what heroes do. Suddenly, Kanoko didn't want to feel content anymore. She wanted to be brave, too. Okay, so what do you think we should? You have a plan, don't you? Tsuyu asked with a tilt of her head. Yeah, I do. Midoriya said with a nod before asking her something. Tsuyu, how far can you jump? I could probably make it to the shore next to the plaza. Tsuyu answered with a finger on her cheek. Would you clear the water while carrying someone? Midoriya asked her another question. Yes, if I'm only carrying a few people. Why do you ask, Ribbit? Tsuyu asked him in curiosity. Because I'm going to electrify the water, we can't touch it afterward. Midoriya explained before pulling out his Chroma Fury saber and holding up the Electro Dino key to show the others. What's that you're holding? Shiozaki asked, refusing to the Dino key. It's the Electro Dino key. If insert this key into my Chroma Fury saber, should be able to conduct a powerful static charge to electrify the water and shock all the villains. I'm going to act as bait to get the villains' attentions onto me and then electrocution them all at once. And since they're in the water it will much more effective. Midoriya explained the plan to them before looking at Shiozaki. But this will only work if we get all of them at once. So Shiozaki, when I give the sign, you have to drop all the villains you captured in your vines back into the water. Very well, just give the word, Midoriya. Shiozaki said with a nod. While Tsuyu, I'm going to need you to pull me back in with your tongue when I finish shocking the villains because the water will be dangerous to touch afterwards. Midoriya told Tsuyu her part in the plan. Sounds good to me. Tsuyu said, liking this plan. Once that's taken care of, Tsuyu and I will carry everyone out of the shipwreck zone. Midoriya said while opening up the mouthpiece on his Chroma Fury saber and unfolding armor key into a small knight, before inserting it into the saber's mouthpiece. Then we can figure out what our next move should be when we're on dry land. Got it? Right. Everyone there said, nodding to the green-haired boy's plan. This could actually work. Minetta thought about Midoriya's genuine plan, feeling a bit hopeful about making out of this alive. Meanwhile, the villains in the water were having a difficult time getting past the wall of vines protecting the ship, as they were now getting frustrated. What the hell is taking so long? It should be hard for us to kill a capable of stupid brats. The shark villain complained about how they were having much trouble against a few kids. Hey, now. Don't forget, Shigaraki told us to keep our guards up. A villain next to him said, the one who could manipulate water. We can't judge them by how old they are, but by their quirks. They could do anything. He turned his gaze back at the ship. Of course, we'll definitely have an advantage in the water, so I'm not exactly worried for us. He said without worry while forming another hand made of water from the lake water again. But before they could get the chance, the UA students decided to make their move. Tsuyu, Shiozaki. You guys know what to do. Midoriya said as both girls nodded without any hesitation, knowing he would have a good plan. Good, then it go time. He said as he stomps onto the railing on the ship before roaring out a battle cry reverberated throughout the shipwreck zone. Rah! This seemed to did the treat as all the villains in the flood zone attention was now focused on Midoriya. Good. Now their attention is now on me. Midoriya thought as he began to carry out the next part of his plan. At the same time, Minetta was saying something to him. You can't be serious, Midoriya, what are you, Midoriya then jumped over the railing without hesitation and high above the villains in the water. Come and get some, you stupid villains. Midoriya shouted towards the villains. Stupid move, kid. The villain with the water manipulate quirk said confidently and was about to attack the kid with his water hand. But little did the villains realize, Midoriya had a plan for them as he grabbed his Chroma Fury saber and placed his left hand was on the mouthpiece lever handle, while looking down at the pool for of villains with a fierce expression on his face. Even if I use a smash, I can't get them all at once when they're in a circle like that, Midoriya thought while repeatedly closing and reopening the mouthpiece lever on his blade a few more times to charge up the Dino Key's power. Besides, there are still other enemies outside of the shipwreck zone, so electrocuting them all at once is the quick way to finishing this. Then once we leave this zone, I need to find the other rangers and together we can deal with the villains. As he thought, gravity began to take effort with he falling down towards the water where the villains are waiting for him. Ha! Like moth to a flame. The shark villain laughed thinking Midoriya was dead meat. After he hits the water, he's mine. Another random villain said with wrecked grin. Then the Chroma Fury saber mouthpiece eyes to light up, as the saber's blade began conducting a ton of electrically running throughout the weapon. Now Shiozaki. Midoriya yelled while holding up his weapon in the air, which got many of the villains confused. What's that kid talking about? One of the villains asked as they saw the vines moving again. Understand. Shiozaki shouted while releasing the villains trapped in her vines and dropping them back into the water. Now go front and punish these foolish villains, Midoriya. She said retracting all of her vines back from around the ship and water. Take this. Electro Fury Blast. Midoriya shouted while swinging his saber downwards to fling a powerful lightning bolt straight down at the villains in the water. The villains never saw it coming, as they were immediately shocked once the lightning bolt crashed down into the water, electrocuting everyone, and everything in the water, except for the UA students who were safe on the ship. The criminal and the water all scream in utter agony before soon passing out from the pain and the lightning subsiding, but the water still conducting some electricity. He did it. Kanoko cried out in joy to see all the villains taken down quickly by Midoriya, who was still falling down towards the electrified water. Tsuyu. Grab him before he hits the water. Shiozaki shouted to the frog girl. Rib bit. Tsuyu quickly shot tongue towards Midoriya at lightning speed and wrapped it around his waist, before pulling him back to the boat. The moment he landed back on the ship, the others immediately surrounded him with joyful expressions and praised him for a job well done. You got them in a single attack. Impressive as always, Midoriya. Tsuyu said looking at her boyfriend's face. The Lord blessed you, Midoriya. He shines a light on you. Shiozaki said with a smile. Why yeah, you were so cool back there. Kanoko happily said with a nod. It worked. Minetta exclaimed in joyous disbelief, "Ya crazy BSTRD, your plan actually worked." That it did, Midoriya said with a chuckle before standing back up to see all the villains in the zone floating unconscious in the water. It's a good thing they were all in the water for me to hit them at once, or else we would have to fight our way out the old-fashioned way. So all we have to do now is swim back to share, right? Kanoko asked, smiling that the villains were dealt with. I'm not going back into the water. Minetta said while pointing at the water. Even if the villains are dealt with, the water is still electrified. For once he's right. We're not swimming back. Midoriya said to them calmly. Me and Tsuyu are going to carry you all out of the flood zone by jumping. He explained what their next move would be. I know Tsuyu can easily make that jump, but can you, Midoriya? Shiozaki asked her boyfriend, who nodded back in response. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem for me, Midoriya said with confidence. And once we're back on dry land we're figuring out our next dash. The boy was interrupted by a beeping sound from his pocket. Everyone there turned to Midoriya, who brought out his mystic morpher and flipped it open, but before he could answer to whom it was calling him, a familiar voice spoke first. Attention to all rangers, this is Tommy, Hollow Tommy announced through the morpher, which surprised everyone there who didn't know about him. What is going on? Who was that? Shiozaki asked in curiosity and confusion from the man on the other line speaking to them. That was my mentor. The one who made me and the others into Power Rangers. Midoriya said, surprising his classmates. But before anyone could ask him anything else, Hollow Tommy continued speaking through Midoriya's morpher. Listen up, because there's not much time to explain. Ren wants all of you to head to the center plaza of the USJ, so you can regroup and launch a counterattack on the villains. Stay strong guys, and may the power protect you. Hollow Tommy said before finishing what he had to say to them. After hearing the message from the AI, the Minetta, Tsuyu, Shiozaki, and Kanoko were speechless at the request from their quirkless classmate, while Midoriya had a neutral expression on his face as he wasn't that surprised by his leader's request. Looks like I got my orders, Midoriya said out loud, with the other looking at him with bewilderment expressions. Wait. Don't tell me you're suggesting. Minetta asked while looking ill, then stern. Are you trying to get us killed or something? He asked as if the boy had a death wish for wanting to jump back into more danger, while Tsuyu riveted questioningly, and both Shiozaki and Kanoko looked shocked. No, I'm not saying we're going to jump into the middle of a fight. It'll only be me. Midoriya said, shaking his head, as the others looked at him, knowing he was insane of thinking of going there to fight those criminals. You guys head to the entrance, I'm going to go regroup with my team so we can take down these villains and monsters. He said to them seriously. Then we're coming as well, Shiozaki said with a serious tone, and the others looked at her like she grew two heads. We are. Kanoko said fearfully, with Midoriya narrowing his eyes at them. No, you're not. You four are going to the entrance, and besides coming with me is too dangerous. This is a ranger-level problem. Midoriya told them harder. If it was regular villains then I wouldn't mind, so back up, but those monsters would overpower you four in a second. He said with seriousness. I'm really sorry, but you can't come with me. You all are not rangers, and I'm not good to risk losing any of you. He said empathically, but the religious girl did not waver. Says the one who is about to run off and fight dangerous villains, Shiozaki reminded him while remaining firm. You can't expect to win a fight against all those villains and monsters even with the other rangers, Sila, our teachers. It'll be too much for you all to handle. We want to help you. She said, trying to reason with her boyfriend. I think they're pretty good, Minetta said before Shiozaki shot a glared at him to shut the boy up. I can handle it. Me and the other rangers had better training than any one of you in class, and we know exactly how to fight those monsters while you don't. Midoriya told her as Shiozaki still looked adamant about going with him. Like I said, this is our fight. Midoriya didn't want any of them to be involved in the fight with Rangers' enemies. Compared to the villains of their world, they weren't a joke. Thrax and those grunts may not be the only ones here attacking either, as there's a strong possibility that more monsters are invading the USJ just as powerful as the son of Zed and Rita. But you'll be breaking the rules, Midoriya, Tsuyu stated with them turning her way, as she looked at Midoriya with a slightly worried expression. Growing up, Tsuyu was taught that vigilantes were nothing more but failed applicants that couldn't be heroes and attention-hugging hero wannabes, and the real heroes are the pro-heroes themselves, who graduated to hero schools such as UA High. You don't have the authority to run in and fight villains. So you Power Rangers can't freely run around doing hero work when we need licenses. It's not fair. The frog girl said, firmly believing in the black and white beliefs she had learned from society. Did already forget what Ren said to everyone on the bus? Midoriya asked the frog girl. Power Rangers fight to protect the lives of the innocent, regardless of what the law tells us. He said, remaining for their reasons for fighting. But, your actions won't be seen as legal. That means you're breaking the rules and being vigilantes. You'll be just as bad as the villains. Tsuyu reasoned back to her boyfriend. Being legal doesn't make it right. And don't ever compare us Rangers to villains against Tsuyu. Midoriya declared back with a serious response, while also giving the girl a chilling glare and making Tsuyu take a step back with wide eyes. Saying something like that isn't just an insult to us, but to every other Power Rangers out there before us who risked their lives fighting for what they believed was right, and every single person's lives they'd saved from monsters that wanted to conquer or destroyed their world. He said with his gaze softening down. I understand this is what you learned is right and wrong, Tsuyu. But there are flaws to this way of thinking that could lead to serious loss of life down the line if that holds someone back from acting when someone needs help. Sometimes there are problems that even the law or rules can't solve, especially when it's holding you back on what's more important to do. He told the girl with a stern tone and expression. The frog girl paused at this as she couldn't argue back at the ranger. Sure, she believed in the laws society had made, but could she really sit there and say she wouldn't help those people just because she didn't have a piece of plastic? It hit especially hard after remembering what Midoriya had said before about how the Rangers after them fought to keep their world safe from dangerous threats. And we're heroes in training, Midoriya continues as he reminds them what they are. We would eventually face villains sooner or later. If we just stand by idly, then we are nothing but normal citizens who watch every hero fight on TV. Sometimes, rules are meant to be broken. How can we achieve things if we are bound by the rules? The choice of a good and respectable leader is sometimes hard to decide, but the results in battle will be effective. Sometimes people have to do something they shouldn't, even if their own mind is screaming not to, and even if society itself says no. That's how we live and evolve, by challenging limitations placed on us. He stated, making the others look dumbstruck by his honorable statement. Midoriya. Kinoko thought while blushing madly from her boyfriend's speech. DMN. Why you gotta be so cool? Minetta asked in envy, which made Midoriya chuckle. There is nothing we can say to change your mind, can we? Shiozaki said, frowning as she could tell the boy's mind was made up. No, there isn't, because it's my duty to fight my enemies if they ever appear to cause trouble for others, Midoriya said back with seriousness before Shiozaki let out a tiring sigh. Okay, then we'll just have to trust you Rangers to deal with this matter. Shiozaki said as she looked at him with a slightly sad but happy expression on her face before saying. But promise us that you'll be careful. I promise, Midoriya replied back while activating One for All before walking up to Shiozaki and Kinoko, and then picking them up in his arms, much to their embarrassment. Come on, we've wasted enough time already. He said, breaking the frog girl out of her thoughts. Alright. Tsuyu said weakly before picking up Minetta in her arms. Then the two jumped off the ship with a mighty leap and up high into the air, while carrying their classrooms across the water to clear the flood zone with no problems. As they flew through the air, Tsuyu couldn't help but recap on Midoriya's words and his own beliefs of heroism. Tsuyu is a bright young lady, with her own opinions, and it's okay for her to have her own beliefs when it comes to right and wrong, but during her time learning about the Power Rangers, she wasn't kind when putting out her beliefs. As bright as she is, she can be a close book. There is a reason why Midoriya told her that the way he did. If the reason was for them to learn something, she isn't being a good student. Being open-minded could ease her sanity towards her beliefs, and perhaps give her a chance to learn something from her boyfriend and the other Rangers. Tsuyu is confused, she doesn't know what to think or what to feel. Towards her own beliefs that she was taught growing up. She cannot just remove her general knowledge just by a few words alone. What am I even thinking about right now? Tsuyu thought with a sigh, as for her to learn and process it would take time and adjust for her to see the gray side in life. Mountain Zone, afternoon. Aha! Kaminari was screaming comically with a big muscular villain in front of him and took a swing at the electric quirk user. But Kaminari narrowly ducks from the villain's punch and rushes out of the way, with the villains giving chase. But suddenly, a large rock hits the big villain at high speed with enough force that the man is sent flying and hitting another rock, forcing him to be unconscious. The one responsible for that is Reiko, who has several other hard objects created by Momo that were floating around her thanks to her poltergeist quirk. These dudes are terrifying. My whole life flashed in front of my eyes. I think I saw the Grim Reaper. What's going on? Kaminari asked as he ran back to Momo, Jiru, Pony, and Reiko as they fought off the villains. Thank you, Reiko. That was close. He said to the ghost girl. Could you maybe take it down a few notches? Jiru remarked while holding her Thundermax saber, annoyed by Kaminari's screaming as the five of them took position next to each other. Right now, we need to focus on getting away from these enemies, Momo said, taking a defensive stance while holding her spin sword. Right, Reiko said with no emotion in her tone. Why right? Pony said in a broken Japanese accent. Then hurry up and pull out a weapon for me too. Kaminari retorted as he saw that Jiru and Momo had swords, while Pony and Reiko were using their quirks to fight long range. You're the one with electrical powers, Jiru said dismissively. Just zap them so we can run. Were you not paying attention during combat training when I explained how my powers work in front of everyone? Kaminari continues his rant. I can cover my body with electricity. But if I try to shoot it out, it'll go everywhere. I'd take you guys down along with them. Or did you want shock treatment today? He explained. And unlike you Power Rangers, I don't know any martial arts or how to fight quirkless. So, I'm counting on the four of you. He said and gave the girls a thumbs up. I'm no help in this situation. You guys gotta get us out of here please. The electric quirk user said with Jiru's eyes twitching. You're a real damsel in distress, aren't you? The punk rock girl said with sarcasm in her tone. Kaminari looked at her before gasping to dodge another villain attacking him from behind, while he jumped back towards Jiru. New idea, Jiru said, then kicked Kaminari hard in his back, causing him to go forward much to his surprise. You're my human stun gun, she finished while Kaminari cried out as he was forced forward to the villains. Seriously? Come oh dash, Kaminari yelled out as he grabbed onto the same villain that attacked him. Kaminari's quirk activated and shocked the villain in a blanket of electricity while making him groan in pain. Whoa. Hey, this is working. I'm super strong. The electric quirk user said in surprise, as he was fine before looking back at his classmates. He then gave the girls another thumbs up. Sit back, you four. You can count on me. What an idiot. All four of them thought. You are exhausting, Jiru said before gasping at something in the corner of her eye and making the ranger move one of her earphone jacks. She noticed a villain with a very long arm changing toward them while holding a long boulder in his right hand. Try electrocuting solid rock, kid. The long-arm villain shouted while using the boulder in his hand for an attack. Jiru then plugged her earphone jack into one of her boots before amplifying her heartbeat through her shoes and sending out a sonic shockwave aimed at the boulder in the long-arm villain's hand, as the boulder began to crumble apart into pieces. Unfortunately for the villain, the elongated arm continued its forward momentum and punched Kaminari in the face, causing the electricity to surge from the villain's fist to his body and shocking him too in the process. Then two more villains with knives and an axe jumped over the three electrics, as they were aiming for Kaminari. But Momo raised her left arm to quickly create a capture net and threw it at the villain with knives that ensnared the man in the net, while Pony fired two horns that hit the face of the axe villain, as the two villains promptly fell down where Kaminari and their two comrades were at before being electrocuted along with them. Nice. Pony said as her horns were missing but new ones were growing at an alarming rate. Nice shoot Tsunatori. Jiru yelled to the girl as the American girl turned to her with a thumbs up. Thanks. Pony said back with a smile. You're lucky that worked out so well, Momo said as she got back into her fighting stance. I'm sorry, maybe I'll ask next time. I'll ask before saving our butts, Gyru replied, as she connected her earphone jacks to her boots and let another beat out again, but this time louder and wider. Her sound wave attack overwhelmed a bunch of villains, with some of them crying and covering their ears from the painful loud noise. DMN Kaminari. You couldn't have asked for some kind of aiming gear when you put in your costume request form. I mean, come on. Gyru complained, clearly mad by the blonde lighting-streaked boy's stupidity. Above the teens, another villain with knives stood over them on the mountain and jumped down toward Gyru to cut her when the criminal stopped in midair, as Reiko used telekinesis to save her classmate. I don't think so, Reiko said in a cold and emotionless voice before the villain was thrown to the other side and into a wall that knocked him out cold. I owe you one, Reiko. Gyru said to the gray-haired girl before cutting down a villain with her sword. That was close. Reiko said while panting a bit before Momo swiftly kicked a villain away from the ghost girl. It's ready. Momo announced as she ran to the middle where Gyru, Pony, and Reiko were standing. What's ready? Pony asked as she stopped firing her horns at the villains while turning to the rich girl. It takes me a little longer. Momo started saying while the back of her costume was expanding as the shimmering effect from her quirk was visible through tears in it. Then the girl's costume was tearing from the strain before it gave out with a big white blanket came from her back and sent into the air above the girls. To make an object this big. Momo finished as the blanket fell over the four girls. A blanket? A villain said, sounding confused. Is that supposed to be a shield? Another villain started to question Momo's creation. But the rich girl popped her head out of the blanket and smirked at them. You're looking at a sheet of insulation 100 millimeters thick. Go, Kaminari. Momo said before she closed the sheet complexly. Upon hearing his classmate's words, Kaminari smirked as he understood what Momo's plan was. Badass. Kaminari said grinning while his nose was bleeding, before glancing at the villains with a sharp gaze and electricity flicking over him. Now I don't have to worry about hurting my friends. He was yelling now, arms raised before swinging them down to send forward the electricity. You guys are fried. He declared with him electrocuting every villain on the mountain zone. After the shock was over, everything that came in the electric blast was burnt and smoking. The sheet suffered too, but the occupants were fine. Momo lifted the sheet from under it and looked around to see that every villain was fried and was out cold from Kaminari's electric attack. Now then, Momo said under the blanket, observing the aftermath. I'm worried about the others. We should find them right away. Ah. Momo. Pony said hesitantly with her, Gyru, and Reiko blushing heavily to see her bosoms being exposed, due to the sheet coming out and causing the front of her costume to rip. You're looking a little overexposed right now. Gyru said, looking flustered. Huh. Momo said, then turned toward the three girls with a smile. I can make some new clothes. She said casually. Yaoyorozu is so punk rock. Gyru thought in awe at how the rich girl was handling things. The next moment, Gyru, Pony, and Reiko heard footsteps which made her gasp, and saw that Kaminari was coming to them. Kaminari. Gyru yelled as she and two Class 1B girls quickly surrounded Momo, acting as shields to make sure the rich girl ain't exposed to Kaminari. Don't you dare look. She warned him, but Kaminari just walked by the girls without so much as giving them a glance. Momo uttered after a moment, as she and the other girls stared out the sheet to see that Kaminari was acting more strangely than normal. They saw that Kaminari had a happy but dumb expression on his face, with blank, deformed eyes, drooling from his mouth, and a little nosebleed coming out from his nose. Way, Kaminari said as he wandered around aimlessly in circles while chuckling like an idiot and giving two thumbs up. The 4 female students left the blanket to observe the out-of-commission Kaminari, as Momo had already repaired her costume. So this is what happens when he overuses his power, Reiko said, looking at Kaminari strangely. I'm just glad my quirk doesn't affect me like that. Pony said, feeling a bit bad for the boy. Man, his face is so priceless. Jairu said while covering a hand over her mouth and trying not to laugh so hard. While Jairu, Pony, and Reiko looked at Kaminari, Momo turned around to see the view of the entire place. She had a troublesome look on her face about everything that was going on right now. So the United Alliance of Evil is back. I know that the other rangers can take care of themselves, but I can't say the same for the rest of the class since they don't know how to deal with our enemies. Momo thought as her mind was filled with unpleasant thoughts about how her classmates facing such dangerous foes. Then the rich girl shook her head to get those negative thoughts out of her mind, as there were more pressing matters to deal with at the moment. This is no time to be thinking about that. We need to regroup with the other rangers to fight these villains. Momo thought with a serious look before speaking up to her friends. Standing around here won't do us any good, she said, getting the other girls' attention with Kaminari still zoned out. We have to find the others and plan our next case of action. Yeah, then we can focus on taking down those. Jairu said before suddenly stopping as her quirk picked up a small sound and slowly looked behind while putting a hand over her ear to focus closely on the sound. Jairu? Pony asked before seeing the punk rock girl's face turning into a scowl. Jairu then wasted no time as she sped past them, and reared her earphone jacks back, slamming them into the ground before unleashing a powerful sound wave that shattered the ground as a skull-faced villain who was hiding underground was ejected out and crashed HRD on the ground in pain from the ranger's attack. But, how? The skull-faced villain groaned out, as Jairu smirked at the man. Let's just say, scum like you can't sneak up on me, Jairu said before opening her mouth to let out an ear-pounding scream. Kaya. She hits the villain with a terrifyingly loud shriek that makes the skull-faced villain howl in pain from the deafening noise and blows him away before knocking him out, as the girls behind her cover their ears from the girl's loud screaming. A Terra scream? Momo asked while recovering from her sonic attack. Seriously, Jairu? You could have warned us, she said, giving the teammate a slightly nasty look with the 3 girls removing their hands from their ears. Sorry, I forgot how loud that could be, Jairu said with a slightly guilty look. But still, that was a close one, Reiko said as she didn't expect an enemy hiding. Who would have thought one of them would be hiding underground? Yeah, I'm just lucky that my quirk was able to pick him up before he tried something. But for now, let's focus on getting out of here and regrouping with our team, Jairu said as Momo nodded. Agreed, but with ranger villains running around it won't be easy. We're safe for now, but there's no telling what kind of danger the others are in, Momo said before suddenly they heard beeping sounds. What's that noise? Pony said, suddenly being a bit freaked out by the beeping. Relax guys, it's just our morphers, Jairu said as she and Momo brought out their morphers. Someone's calling us, Momo asked as the 2 girls activated their devices to see who it was. Attention to all rangers, this is Tommy, Holo Tommy announced through the morpher, which surprised Pony and Reiko as the 2 rangers listened to their mentor's message. Listen up, because there's not much time to explain. Ren wants all of you to head to the center plaza of the USJ, so you can regroup and launch a counterattack on the villains. Stay strong guys, and may the power protect you, he said, finishing the message. Once they heard the message, Jairu and Momo looked at each other before nodding at one another as they knew what their next case of action should be. Looks like we know what our next move should be, Yamamoto, Jairu said to her. Indeed, we do, Momo said before shifting her gaze to Pony and Reiko, looking strangely at the 2 rangers after hearing Holotommy's message. Please listen well, you 2. We're about to face those villains and our enemies head-on, so we're going to need the 2 to take Kaminari back to the front entrance, she told her friends. Pony and Reiko both looked at each other with unsure expressions, with Kaminari's brain still being fired. Then the two Class 1B students turned their heads back to the Rangers before speaking to them. "I have no idea what that was all about, but it sounds like you guys have your work cut out for you," Reiko said with a blank expression before giving them a tiny smile. "So go and do what you have to. Right. You can leave Kaminari's safety to us," Pony said while puffing in her chest. "Just give those bad guys a good beating for us." This made the two Rangers smile at their classmates' understatement and trust. "Well, be sure to give it our all," Momo said with a smile. "Thanks, guys. You both so rock," Jairu said to them both. "Now let's grab this idiot and get moving already," she said, pointing at Kaminari. As the UA students were about to make their departure from the mountain zone, they were suddenly surrounded by several ranger grunts as they hissed at the 5 students threateningly. "It's those things again," Pony screamed while pointing at the monsters. "Seems like we will have to take out some trash," Jairu said quietly and glared back at them while standing in front of her friends. "How very annoying." He put away her sword and decided to fight barehanded. "It seems we do, Jairu," Momo agreed while holding her blade in a sword stance and standing next to her teammate. "Pony, Reiko, just leave these enemies to us. Take Kaminari and stay back," she told them with a serious tone while ready her spin sword. "Okay, we'll leave them to you too," Reiko said. As she and Pony grabbed onto a still out of it Kaminari, and pulled him back from the fighting. With their classmates out of the way, Jairu and Momo now focused on the foot soldiers in front of them who were slowly approaching them. Then after what seemed like a good few seconds stare down, the female rangers rushed forward at the grunts with them doing the same. Jairu was surrounded by several foes as a putrid leaped over to hit her with its weapon, but Jairu elegantly moved out of the way as a putty attacked next from her right side and threw a punch at her, which Jairu was able not only catch by using the putty's momentum to toss him over to a group of charging monsters as they all fell down. Then a Vivix charges at her from the right side for a punch too, as Jairu blocks the attack and counters with a quick jab to the chest that pushes the Vivix back before grabbing a henchman's spar that was move at her to change the direction of the attack from the girl, while spinning out of the way to meet more foes. Jairu then stopped at Batling's kick with her right arm before attacking both the Batling in front of her and a Cyclobot right behind her simultaneously with a punch and back kick that sent the two creatures fall straight to the ground, as Jairu spun out of the way against from a Tenga lunging at her and raised both of her forearms to block the Grinder's attack. Soon Jairu was getting double-teamed by the Tenga and Grinder with her blocking and evading their assault before moving back a bit to get enough room to kick the Tenga on her right and then Grinder on her right, and finishing things up with a roundabout kick as the two grunts flew back towards the ground. Then the punk rock girl cartwheeling over to a new batch of enemies, Jairu showed off her martial arts by swiftly dodging, blocking, or countering all of the grunt attacks thrown at her as she raised an eyebrow in disbelief at the situation before doing an backflip to a putrid that tried to tackle her from behind as she landed on the ground and dodged a quadrant kick as Jairu then proceeds to deliver multiple jabs at his stomach and shoulders before finishing it off with a nasty haymaker that surprisingly sends the monster flying to the ground. "No even a challenge," Jairu commented before taking out more enemies. Momo was a blur of motion as she launched toward her opponent in a blur of motion and stroked them down without mercy. She avoided a Tenga warrior's reckless charge by moving to the side and turning around to slash the creature in its back to make the Tenga fall face forward to the ground, as Momo turned back around to block a Batling's sword from reaching the girl before swiftly moving the blade behind her back to stop two more enemies' weapons aim at her from a Grinders and Quantrons. Then Momo turns back around to the grunts and immediately cuts them both down a single strike while also using that momentum to turn back forward and charge at a putrid, who was running at the rich girl for an attack. But Momo quickly landed a hit across the putrid chest before it could do anything. She then blocked a Cyclobot's attack from the left side with her spin sword and swiftly struck the robot down with it falling forward. Then Momo noticed a henchman rushing at her next with the grunt holding spar up high in the air and swinging it down at the ranger, only for Momo to raise her sword up and easily stop the spar before pushing her weapon upward to move the henchman's spar away to create an opening for the girl to use as she immediately taking the monster out with a slash to the gut. As the foot soldier dropped to the ground, Momo looked up to see that the other ranger villains were a bit hesitant to charge blindly at the female ranger, but a lone Vivix got over its fear and rushed at the girl in hopes of killing her. But Momo only took a sword stance in response and blocked all the Vivix's attacks with ease before leaping backward with a twirl to get some distance from the enemy, as they looked at each other for a good few seconds to see who would make the first move with the Vivix coming at her first. The Vivix threw multiple punches at her as Momo blocked every single one of them with her sword and swiftly struck the Vivix down when she saw an opening to exploit. Then she pointed her blade at a putty coming at her from behind as the blade implied into the creature's gut that stops it in place before Momo turning back around to the putty while removing the blade from its gut and swing her sword down at the creature to take it out of the fight. "You're way too slow to match my skills," Momo stated as she prepared to take on more ranger foes. Unknown to the group of students, Deku was there watching everything on top of the mountains as his gaze was fixed on Momo. That fighting style of her. It's similar to these from the Shiba clan. Deku said with great interest, as he hadn't felt this way in a long time since his ultimate deal against the Red Samurai Ranger. Could she be the one? So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 20. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author GokuMuto on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.